It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Friday, August 22nd, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Have a few updates I wanted to get out of the way before we get started today. One was just kind of follow up on a general kind of update on what's going on behind the scenes. If you've been following, both my discussions on AM Wake Up and different places outside of this show, which I don't like to do this kind of stuff in the show just because I want to get right to business. But my point is you might have caught some other stuff around in regard to what I've been dealing with in regard to lawsuits, which ultimately we seem to have kind of gotten to a pause moment, which I don't want to go into it all now, but it's very positive. We spent a ton of money to fight, ultimately won, in the context of not allowing them to win out, but ultimately lost because we had to spend so much money, and I'm still paying that off in regard to the lawyer. But that is still a positive thing, and you guys allowed that to happen. But there's some that still may be coming. We're kind of waiting to see if they decide to push forward, because it's all kind of coming from the same place. But all that's to say that I've been going through a lot of kind of upheaval, more than, in addition to everything else, censorship and different, in the midst of all this, I think it was Stripe. We had a couple of issues with platforms and different things as well. But all that's to say that we have got to a point where I feel like the last American Vagabond is going up at this point. Now, I had to pull back in a lot of ways, as I'm sure you noticed, on some of the different writing, just because I had to really kind of reassess where we were. Ultimately, because of all the attacks, we weren't able to maintain the same output. But I wanted to make sure that we were sound. I didn't want to just keep going forward and end up, not being able to take care of the people that are part of this platform. And so I had to kind of pull back a little bit. But as of right now, starting this next coming month, my plan is to go back at least to some degree to Derek has been writing, but more from Robert, more, the funds to go back a little bit more to some of the writing, not to where it was before. But that's a positive note in and of itself. Now, on the side of that, I myself have been just doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes for a lot of different things, for potential future ventures that relate to TLAV, or ultimately just trying to find more ways to keep this platform growing. And in no way is that other than just trying to find different associations or people that want to support us, no advertising, things like that. And as always, completely transparent. The only money coming into this platform is what you guys can see, all public, all donation based. But as where we're at now, I feel that I'm good to go back to committing to a certain, just more content at the end of the day. And for me, it's important that just from my own work, not even getting into other aspects or other shows that I do, I'd like to be able to do at least 4 to 5 shows a week with the Daily Wrap-Up, which is something that's very important to me, like my own personal goal outside of the last American Vagabond. And it's important to me because I feel that this show, as much as it puts a lot on my shoulders to feel like I need to cover not literally every story, but, the entire scope of what's going on, that we do it consistently, that it becomes more than just, that it's at least so many days in a row to keep momentum going with these conversations. So that's my point is that's what I'm committing to starting next month. With where we're at, I feel good to put that time back into it and make sure we can keep, the content flowing. Not just the content, but the conversation, to make sure that you guys have somewhere you can look to, that at the very least, that I care about being accurate, that I care about being nonpartisan and objective to a fault. Doesn't mean I'm always right. Clearly, you can look back and find examples of me making mistakes like anybody, but you'll always find, anytime it's made, me following up and correcting it, or anybody else that's a part of this platform. So that said, I just thought that was important to hear. It's a positive note, guys. Because of you and the support of this platform, we were able to continue. When, I've had a couple interviews I'll point out in a second. In more than one recently, we had conversations about this. Greg Reese, for example, said that, Corey Hughes said, every single person he knows in this industry is flat broke. And I said I was really proud, blessed, honored to have a sense of success in this field that few can say that they have. And nonetheless, as I said on the interview, we're in any moment right now, we're 1-2 months away if we have some, situation or a bad thing from this going away. I will fight tooth and nail to make sure this continues because you guys believe in us. But positive note, because I really do feel some good momentum right now. And overall, the support that we got from everybody out there, and we try to get back to everybody we can, whether it's a letter or however else we respond. But just know that if you're out there and you support this platform and over the last so many months or however long you've been doing it, it's because of you that we continue. And it really means a lot to me. Now, overall, there was 2 more points I want to make. One was that right now we're going through some overhaul on the website backend stuff that you guys don't see. It's not important to put in front of you, but takes a lot of time and work and effort and money. But ultimately, going to try to revamp the website because it's necessary right now for multiple reasons. But that said, in the process of going through this right now, he noticed there was some malicious code on the site, and we had just looked through this. Now, he called it a hack. This is my guy behind the scenes, but I want to get into it more with him to find out what that was about. But I just want to point out that, this is not unique. I bet you everybody in this field doing the kind of work we are in some way is being affected like this. Obvious reasons. I don't even need to go into it further, but also that there will be some potential changes coming. So look out for that, but good stuff all going forward. Now, today, interesting conversation today. A lot of just the way these things continue to develop is it's I don't even want to say entertaining because it's so horrible in some cases, but it is interesting to watch the way that these things play out, the way people respond to them in regard to the Maxwell transcript is one part we're going to start on early today. But I decided to put off till tomorrow. I'm doing my show tomorrow in regard to a few things that I really wanted to get to today, but it would have been far too long in regard to many different stories swirling around Israel right now. Today, in general, on the stuff we are going to get to, I'm going to try to catch up on a few things you've probably already seen, but you may have wanted my take on it to see, just how I view this fitting into everything else. But for instance, the Israeli government entity who the U.S. government allowed to leave, who was caught in a child's predator sting. If you haven't seen that, we'll talk about it more tomorrow. And it's everywhere. It's important to understand, though, that the reality of that is so insane to watch, seeing as how they lied about it. The Israeli government lied about it even happening. He wasn't arrested. Then it came out that he was. Then the U.S. government lied and put a tweet out that said, we weren't involved with that. We didn't, that wasn't us. It was that. Nope. And it turned out they were lying about that too. And it ties back to the two, or not the two, but two Zionists within their government that allowed this to take place. And it's insane to watch around the Epstein conversation and all the people that are trying to hide from that story, but so much more than that. That's one part of a larger conversation, obviously, around the ongoing genocide and the infiltration that's taking place around the world. That just seems to be sort of an anomaly, like a byproduct. This person just is a disgusting person and got caught doing something, which exposes the larger story. But all of this shows you this continuing problem, both of the manipulation of this country, but the problem for those trying to infiltrate that are being seen. Very interesting. There's so much going on around this, but we're going to start today with a conversation, multiple conversations around Maxwell and the evolution of that story around Epstein. I think is very relevant for many reasons, and especially in regard to the way Donald Trump's administration is responding after everything they said around this story. And it's sadly not pretty much what we expected. I mean, we'll get into the transcript that came out, the audio recordings that are about 3 hours shy of what's supposed to be there. I don't see many other people talking about that, but it doesn't mean it's not there. It means they didn't give it to you at the very least. And we'll go over what that may mean. It's just a continuation of this story that shows you that they're lying to us, in my opinion. Overlapping this with both those stories, by the way, which very much interconnect around the artificial intelligence point, because Epstein has connection to this research and different eugenics overlaps, but the AI part of this, that is the worry of where this is all going. And Elon Musk had a really important, if you're paying attention, it's not new, but in a statement he made that shows you where this is going. And I want to overlap that with the Palantir connection of things you might not have seen, including Peter Thiel and his presentation he's giving called The Antichrist, a 4-part lecture series. Good times, but we'll get into that in a second. But also we're going to talk about the immigration overlap that intersects with that story, and then talk about what's going on first with immigration in regard to the just nationwide unconstitutional actions being taken against largely people who have no criminal record, and within that largely people who are in fact here legally or going through one process or another to do so, which means they're not here illegally. Nonetheless, they're being targeted, and some horrifying examples, just flatly unconstitutional, and then overlapping that alarming story with the DC story, which, by the way, turns out to be very clearly one and the same. The reality of understanding how this is still about immigration. What they're doing in DC, at least in part, has been used to go after people like we're talking about. And so this is all, as usual, one agenda. The narratives shift and fluctuate. It's all about achieving that goal with whatever narrative they need to shove in front of you. And it just is, you cannot support this if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in the values of this country. Supporting what he's currently doing, even if they're doing it with good intentions, is the wrong path. It is wrong. It is not the way. This is counterintuitive to what they claim they're fighting for. I mean, even again, if they believe in what they're doing and they think they're doing it for the right reasons, as always, doing the wrong thing for the right reasons is still wrong. And we have to be real about that. And playing at the other side is the reason this has to happen, you're already lost. Even if that's true, the answer is not do the same thing back. I don't know why that's not the clearest thing in the world. But overlapping this with the ongoing DC martial law rollout, which you might have seen, it's coming out now that it's being suggested more than just the statements of what Trump has been saying, but that there's potentially 19 more states that are opening up for this exact thing. And of course, in that statement, conflating it with the idea of both immigration, but also, just to clean up crime, because they're all the same thing, right? No, it's about control. It is about martial law or military, whatever you want to call it. Even martial law doesn't exactly fit to what this is, but it is the same idea. It puts the right idea in your mind about shifting away from what we understand, what we're told at the very least is supposed to be the process. Now, maybe in a week from now, when they clean up all the crime, this all goes away. Does anybody actually think that's going to happen, though? Does anybody anywhere with any background in following in history of science, of political, any of it? Have you ever seen an example of a government taking power like this and ever giving it back? Nobody has, in my opinion, because I'm pretty sure it doesn't happen. But we'll get there. Let's start today with, I wanted to make sure we pointed out a couple of recent interviews on The Last American Vagabond. Well, since this page is up, by the way, make sure you check out this show we did called the Technocratic Tiptoe. I really do think that was an important one. I'm going to be doing some presentations for people based on this kind of on that presentation. But I had a great interview. Where we go right here with Greg Reese. Just first time we've ever connected on interview. And so it's kind of more of a sprawling, kind of just about different things and his opinions. But we got into pole shifts and different things that I think are really interesting, and I haven't taken enough time. I mean, I'm well aware of the topic. It's been around for a long time, but like the current relation and whether there's, an impending time frame. And I'm interested to see what's going around this. It's an interesting story, but I'm very skeptical about the, use of these kind of stories, as always, as we all should be. But great interview. We talk about a few different things that I think are relevant. I had an interview with Corey Hughes about the independent media token, which I think is also a very important conversation. Not to say that anybody has to support this or, the idea that the pushback, I understand about cryptocurrency, but if we're going to be objective, make sure you look at this with clear eyes and don't just immediately toss the baby out with the bathwater. It seems to me that Corey has a good intention with this, and ultimately that it is about helping independent media. But it's up for you to decide, right? This is not some do this or support that. This is what, if you look into this idea and you believe it's worth the time, which I believe it is, then give it your due diligence. If it's something that is supporting independent media, when it's something, it's a grants for independent media is what it amounts to. If it's successful, I just don't see how that ends up being a bad thing. So, because really what's interesting about this is the success for people like Corey is contingent on it getting free money to independent media and then that model growing. So it's just weird how the framing, I mean, again, I understand the inherent skepticism of anything digital at this point, but it's like the internet analogy. So please take time to listen to this and understand it, because I do believe this is, if this succeed, will help this field, and in particular the independents, not the mainstream alternative media versions of it. And I believe that was, I thought there was one more, but in any case, and we had an IMA panel. I'm not sure if we pointed that out, but I'll leave that there for you guys to check out. Starting with a couple of points. True Media said this, and I could fit this in clearly with the Washington, D.C. overlap, but really just like the entire show today. This kind of premise, the idea, the mindset. What's happening now is about getting the people to just accept blatant, naked, open. You could just say right there, ... whatever the current narrative is, or whatever the current government agenda is, because that's what it usually comes down to. Just getting you to accept the thing they want. But today, just naked, open corruption. And in a sense, I get what they're saying is that it's not just about like getting this one thing done. It's about kind of imagining, if you will, the way that we engage with government, like that they're just in control, they're in power. We have no, like this game we play where we somehow have influence over their actions. We all seem to know that's just not the reality, but at least they have this narrative. They want that narrative to go away, excuse me. The idea that you even have any influence, whether that one vote you did or not, they decide and you just sit down and we're doing what's right for you. So shut up and go back to sleep. And it very much models this whole El Salvador, I guess, illusion, if you want to be honest about it. Like it's the same kind of thing we're going to get to in Washington, D.C., that they're cleaning up all the crime and making it better. Okay, well, if cleaning up the crime, if that's even actually what's happening, comes at the expense of your liberty, well, you know what, guys? There's a saying for that, right? Those who would give up a little liberty to give a little security deserve neither. Benjamin Franklin, paraphrasing. I mean, we have to understand how intuitive, how inherently important that is to this country in particular. And now we're watching people ignore their own principles, or whether they had them to begin with or not. That's the point. So we are watching this take place where they are trying to get you to accept exactly, like almost aiming at, I guess, as always, using the thing they want you to think they're trying to accomplish when they're not even really trying to accomplish that, to get you to accept what you would never accept in the first place. And it says the people involved already do. So mean the government, for example, right? Now they already do accept blanket and corruption because they are part of it. Now they want you all to look the other way while they do. They want your complicity in their crimes. So just as a general sentiment today, this is, everywhere you're looking right now, and look, probably has always been that way. But for whatever reason today, they want you to endorse that. Not ignore it, but endorse it, to be a part of it. On top of that, with the media overlap, while we're all kind of being dragged into this, or rather, hopefully, cheering it on is what they would want. The mainstream alternative media is doing a lot of tap dancing and a lot of juggling. And I said, sure seems like a lot of breaking news coming from the mainstream alternative media that everyone has known about for quite some time, right? Whether it's 9/11 rehashing they're doing when there's no real new developing information, which glad, talk about it. It's important. But this screeching, oh my God, look at this, when it's should ask you why. Why now? What? Well, I think we know why. Or this one, breaking. Tucker Carlson says Epstein was a Mossad agent. Good. I'm not even sure whether I'm decided on whether Tucker is suddenly calling things out or doing what I think he might be doing. Either way, it's good that people say that. But again, this has been old. This is old hat, guys. This is old information. And now we're going to get to Maxwell recently saying that's all fake news. He wasn't intelligence. There's no list. You're going to laugh when we get to that. But this person says the plan is to discredit people who have been saying this for years and make old stuff look new. I agree. This is an interesting overlap to this. Right now, the government in general, the one thing that it is really interested in trying to get you to accept whichever side you prefer, that they're the ones fighting for you. When neither will, or when it is not. Now, this is interesting to me. This was what the White House put out. It says, this is art from the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery, which, by the way, it's art, whether or not you like what it's about. So these absolute morons in government are always trying to frame it as the other. It's just embarrassing. The same thing the right and the left do, right? That's not art because we don't like what it means. You're all children. But it says, this is art from the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery commemorating the act of illegally crossing the exclusionary border. This was even made a finalist for one of its awards. This is what President Trump means when he says the Smithsonian is out of control. Right? Because how dare they have opinions about art that we disagree with? Just dumb. But the point, guys, I agree. It's a silly thing to you're creating, like, it's not that art can be made and it's wrong, right? But that politically it's being put in front of you by people in politics, right? So when the other side was in power, they're trying to lionize people who are breaking the law. Okay. Well, you could make an argument clearly about people who are suffering in U.S. foreign policy. We do it all the time, but it is still against the law. So it's a stupid thing for them to do. Now, let's remember the reality of a border crossing illegally. It's a civil infraction. So this game they play, it's also part of that, but that's a different conversation. The point is that this is silly. This is political. The idea that you would try to make this a thing. Okay, I agree with that, right? So what are they going to do? The same thing in reverse. They go, let's get this out of the way. Here's a suitable replacement. Okay, so here comes Donald Trump's administration going, look, this is an image called Guardians of the Homestead. Oh, you mean the homestead that you guys were like literally, the government would do anything they can to stop us from doing, right? The idea of the homestead is so shockingly counter to what the U.S. government wants from you. It's embarrassing they'd pretend this is what they want you to support. They think this is being put out, or at least the suggestion. It's a small thing. It's one tweet. But the point is, this is being pointed to by the White House because they want you to think that's what they believe in. We want you to be free in the middle of the plains with nobody around. No. Yeah, we'll want you to be free in the middle of the plains with your digital ID and your constant surveillance and your fingerprints and your biometrics. And then go ahead. Then you can live over there. Oh, never mind. You can't have that much land. Never mind. You have to be in a freedom city. The insulting nature of them claiming this is what they think and counterbalance to that. They're both two parts of the absurdity of our government. The same point. The left doesn't give a crap about these people. They don't, and I'm not talking about average people on the left or even people in Congress. Some of them do, some of them don't. I think they're all sociopaths. The point in Congress is the people on the left that are in power, they don't care about these people. They're using this to gain a political edge or to gain a certain momentum. Same thing here. You think the Republicans care about whether you're free, or whether you have your own land? And no, they're using ideas that you care about to convince you that they're the side that matters. It's just so tiresome. It's so stale. It's every single time in the conversation in partisanship, it's the same old hamster wheel. But I just wanted to make that point, and it's constantly a battle like this. And both sides are lying to you. I just wish we could really absorb that. But honestly, I think that most people are starting to. Now, that I get pushback on. I get it. But I think it's pretty clear when you stand back and look at the bigger picture. Now, on top of that, some interesting overlapping news in regard to the same old thing, the Great Reset. Charlie Robinson and I had a great interview today. We do our kind of monthly-ish, like what the hell is happening. That's what I've called it, our kind of monthly discussion. We had a great interview today. It'll go up most likely tomorrow. And we talk about a lot of this stuff. We talk about BlackRock. We talk about things we just pointed to, the absurdity of the partisan media. But this is what's interesting. Is I'm sure you've seen Larry Fink of BlackRock is now chair of the World Economic Forum, and just intimated that the days of personal car ownership will soon be over. You know, the same BlackRock that's very, very cozy with the current Trump administration, or the one before that, by the way, when he allowed them to take over the treasury of the U.S. government. Or let's not forget that BlackRock is very much overlapped with Elon Musk and Twitter. They funded that. Or also, interestingly, very much overlapped, intertwined with people like Bill Gates. But none of that matters because these are the ones fighting for freedom, right? Because they yell at the loudest. I mean, if it matters, it matters. If BlackRock is a big, bad, evil problem, and it's only when the Democrats are close to it, then you're a child. Then you're lying to yourself. But I don't think I'm speaking to the majority of people. I think most of you out there, left or right, are aware of what these things are and where it's going. The point is, the Great Reset is on hyperdrive. I've never seen more movement in this conversation than under Trump's current administration. But remember, it's just the government. It's just one part of the continual U.S. government manipulation. That's why Biden continued the same thing, handed it off to Trump, and it's rapidly escalating. I mean, we must see that by now, and we'll make more points of that as we go through the next segment. But overall, recognize that this is just, it never slows down, and they just, the hypocrisy of not calling out one and calling out the other, it baffles me. But at least, or really more so, why most people can't call out the people at the top of the team sport politics illusion. But knowing all of that, BlackRock and the interconnected, or Black Cube, and all the Israel ties to the whole thing. Oh, and by the way, Charlie said he's coming out with a report about BlackRock that'll just blow your mind. The amount of money that they're dealing with. It's clear what this is. It's clear BlackRock is one of the main elements to this whole rolling out infrastructure. It's not hard to see. But let's talk about the Maxwell overlap to all this, because there's many ways this ties in, right? I mean, Maxwell and Epstein are clearly part of a larger apparatus that they don't want you to really define. They want you to think, oh, we got the bad guy, put him away, only once we all scream for decades for them to go after it. But ultimately, it ties back to not just the control structure, but, Epstein connected back to all sorts of eugenics, technocracy level and research. Israel completely immersed with both of them. And her father, by the way, being a Mossad agent, and the UK, despite, all the different obvious interconnection points. So this story itself is important, not just because they're, it's sort of like you're pulling on a thread that connects right back to the power structure they don't want you to see, but because this is the way that they get a lot of these things done. There are many moving parts to what this is. It's not just sexual blackmail, but realize that things like this are how they coerce governments into carrying out policy counter to their interests, how they manipulate people in the ICC to remove investigations, right? This is the kind of thing we're talking about. So it's not just these people that matter, but what this story uncovers that I think all of the U.S. government and plenty of others are really uncomfortable about. So this person simply said, The government privately interviewed Maxwell for 9 hours. That's important to remember. That's what they said. Right after they quietly moved her to a low security prison. Right. And then nothing seemed to happen for about a month, which is just very strange. And we'll read some articles about it. Nobody still even explained why she was moved to that prison. And she got her non-prosecution deal, right, in the first place. But that's before they I'll play the clip for you where they say that even. The proffer meeting, they call it, or proffer meeting, I think. And it says, still no transcript, which now has come out. I mean, they say we're witnessing the biggest cover-up in American history. I don't believe that. I think I just shared it because of the point. I don't think this is the largest cover-up in American history, but it's certainly a cover-up. I think that's pretty clear. Now, Stella Fox played a clip down here. Maria Farmer, an Epstein victim, is speaking out on the cover-up. It's just interesting to me that, this is now starting to get some traction. Don't forget that Whitney Webb interviewed Maria Farmer for The Last American Vagabond back in 2020. Now, it's an audio video recording, and it's so funny the pushback she gets. This is Whitney Webb, who Maria Farmer reached out to her and said, I'd like to tell you what I know. And Whitney let her speak her mind and let her talk about what her experiences were. The idea that Whitney's supposed to be screaming back at her about things, it's her statement, basically. It's her testimony. So the way that this gets framed is just absurd to me, right? Of course, there are probably in some cases, let's put it this way. When you're in that room and she's giving her testimony, you don't know the validity of half the stuff. She's just simply speaking her mind. And I think that most of what she's saying is accurate. There's plenty of I would just say, I don't know for sure. The point is that there's so much information around this. And it feels like there's so much pushback about any insight, especially when it overlaps with somebody like Donald Trump. So you can listen to him for yourself. She goes on about Trump. She goes on about Prince Andrew and how that they're very much part of the problem. So here's the clip they played that Stella Fox shared underneath this post.
Lying? Oh, my heavens, yes. Yes, he's lying. Yes.
And that's Maria Farmer for the podcast.
It's one of the most egregious acts of injustice I've ever witnessed. It feels like Watergate times like a billion because it involves children. And I think that what he's doing is trying to cover up his association or affiliation with these people.
Since becoming president, Donald Trump has done everything in his power to distance himself from the billionaire financier and his vile crimes.
I had a falling out with him a long time ago. I don't think I've spoken to him for 15 years. I wasn't a fan.
But isn't it funny how that's his statement now, but when he was asked way back when, he was like, who, Epstein? What? But you have to pick up on these lies. Now, as always, it could be that he just knows how that will seem. Like, hypothetically speaking, he's not guilty of any crime in this context. We know he's guilty of plenty of others, like they all are, left and right. But maybe just recognize, well, if I say that, they're going to use it against me. Like, that's certainly possible. I can consider that possibility, but that doesn't change that he's lying. See, I'll stop with what I can prove. And if you can prove that he's lying, that should matter, regardless of what, logic you want to fill in to give him the benefit of the doubt, which is just never, it's an embarrassing thing to do from an adult with a politician.
But for Maria, there can be no doubting the depth of their relationship.
Epstein said he was his best friend.
Yep.
He just said, that's my best friend.
And that's on the record, by the way. I played you a clip of this doing the same thing from the Daily Beast podcast. He said he was my closest friend for 10 years. Very weird how obvious that can be. And yet people ignore it. They deny it. Let me see if I actually have that. Yep, there it is. Oh, hold on. I remove one of these. And it's just a really quick. It's just a really quick clip or audio clip of Epstein saying that.
So how do you know this?
That was closest friend.
So the podcast, it's low audio, but that's what he says. I was Donald's closest friend for 10 years. Now it goes on. I'll include it. So, he could be making it up. It's always possible. Anybody should be able to admit that. But if we don't have evidence of that, and the evidence, everything else suggests, all the photographs and all the connections, or flight logs, anyway, it's like giving that credence. It's just so embarrassing the way people try to hide from these things. But we should, just in the same way that we shouldn't go all the way over, engage with the facts. What do the facts show? This is the article this was from today. Justice Department issues transcripts of interviews with Epstein ex-girlfriend Maxwell. The Justice Department on Friday released transcripts of interviews, that's today, its number 2 official did with Jeffrey Epstein's imprisoned former girlfriend as the Trump administration scrambles to present itself as transparent amid a fierce backlash over an early refusal to disclose a trove of records from the sex trafficking case. Now, what I find really interesting about this article is if you would imagine this as we go through it being written by, TLAV or somebody else from before, and the way that AP and anybody else would have engaged with it. It's just such an interesting thing to consider and think about, because the way they're writing this article, you could argue right now, there's a little bit more allowance in this direction, whether because it's about Trump, and whether that's because the real agenda is to make you think they're at odds, or maybe these individuals hate Trump. Both probably happen in the same conversation. But what's interesting is that they're writing about this in a way that seems unusual for the mainstream media. And you'll see what I mean by that. The disclosure represents the latest Trump administration effort to repair self-inflicted political wounds after failing to deliver on expectations that its own officials had created through conspiracy theories and bold pronouncements that never came to pass. Now, let's be clear. Some of those conspiracy theories are things that I absolutely can prove to you are true. So that's worth considering, about Epstein killing himself or the associations of certain people. So they're lying to you, but at the same time, AP is doing its job of making sure that part, so as we always say, let's just hypothetically, for sake of conversation, let's say that one point right there is the most important thing. We don't know why, like Trump's connection or something like that. So the plot of this whole article that in many ways gives you things that might seem uncharacteristic to be given by corporate media, but it's all about that lie, right? Everything else is true, but it's about, and the conspiracy theories. That the one thing, that's how the most effective lies work. Mostly truth and the lie buried in there in the right way, in ways you don't even, almost passing, don't even notice. So always consider that. And it says, by making public 2 days worth of interviews, officials appear to be hoping, that's today, that at least temporarily keep at bay sustained anger from President Trump's base, even as they continue to sit on other evidence they had suggested was being prepared for public release. So what does it show you? Clearly, this game they're playing about how nobody's talking about it anymore and it's only a few fringe morons on his base, everyone can tell that's not true. Leading Republican voices are saying that's not true. So it just shows you this weird at odds, leading members of their movement and the Trump administration. What does that say about those people if they still support the administration? It's very interesting. Now it says, I may have met Donald Trump at that time, Maxwell says, because my father was friendly with him. Yeah, we know that, but it's an interesting thing to admit, at least through the transcripts on this report, because Maxwell was a Mossad agent. Not hard to look at and not hard to find out. I mean, Whitney's books will give you far more insight into Maxwell and the overlap. That's what's that movie about Tetris? Have you guys seen that? It's on Apple, I think. Even that movie goes into these very overlaps of his intelligence connections. It's just, of course, through the U.S. government. But the point is, it's very clear that it's an open secret that this person is tied to intelligence. But you should understand that it's Mossad as well, if not solely. And the point was that she says, my dad was very friendly with him and liked him very much. Okay, that doesn't have to prove anything other than this Mossad agent was very friendly and liked Trump a lot. But that's a data point to remember, right? When it fits in with everything else, it starts to be pretty clear what's going on. After her interview, Maxwell was moved from the low security federal prison in Florida, where she had been serving a 20-year sentence, to a minimum security. So she was already at a low security federal prison, which I think all of this is so insane, to a prison camp in Texas. They Club Fed style. Neither her lawyer nor the Federal Bureau of Prisons have explained the reason, which I find shockingly weird. How would you not be like, this is why? At least we're in the middle of making a deal. They don't even want to say that. Clearly, that's what's happening, guys, or it's already been made. The saga has consumed the Trump administration over the last month, following an abrupt 2-page announcement from the FBI and Justice Department that Epstein killed himself, despite conspiracy theories to the contrary. That a client list that Attorney General Pam Bondi had intimated was on her desk did not actually exist, and that no additional documents from the high-profile investigation were suitable to be released until now. They're being released, of course, because they waited and you guys kept pushing, and so they said, well, okay, now we have some. Just I'll show you that in a second. The announcement produced outrage from conspiracy theorists. That's the third time they put that out there. Online sleuths and Trump supporters who had been hoping to see proof of a government cover-up. Well, guess what? You're already getting that. That's what's so funny about the framing from the corporate media. That's what they're pointing to. So it's weird. You see what I'm saying? And it says, and an expectation driven in part by comments from officials, including Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, who on many podcasts before taking their current positions had repeatedly promoted the idea that damaging details about prominent people were being withheld. Patel, for instance, said in at least one podcast before becoming director that the Black Book was under the direct control of the FBI. Now, again, you could argue he was just saying these things because he knew that would get him clout with the side. But if that's your thought now, then at least acknowledge that he's just a lying grifter that said whatever you wanted to hear to get your support. And then the moment he got in power, he went full mainstream line. You got to be honest about this stuff. One way or the other, this is not good. The administration had an early stumble in February when far-right influencers were invited to the White House. DC Drano, Libs of TikTok, the real journalists out there, and provided by Bondi with binders marked the Epstein Files Phase 1, guys. Just Phase 1. More's coming. And then I think it was even ABBA and some others. They started to tell you that, or it's like Paulina. They started to say Phase 3 is on the way. And I'm like, Phase 3? We didn't even get a Phase 1. Okay, this Phase 1 was a bunch, as it says even in this article. Where does it say that? That contained largely had already been in the public domain. So even the Associated Press can acknowledge that it was stuff that we already knew. Then Phase 2 just didn't happen. They've lost the plot on this conversation. After the first release fell flat, Bondi said officials were poring over a truckload of previously withheld evidence that she had been handed over by the FBI and raised expectations for forthcoming releases. Now, again, you guys know all this. It's just interesting to see the AP so kind of succinctly break this down. And it's not even that shocking, but just it's weird for me, at least in my perspective, to see this coming from the corporate media, seeing as how I think this is a conversation that was kept by everybody, left and right, and still largely is. But it says, but after a weeks-long review of evidence in the government's possession, the Justice Department said last month that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. The department noted that much of the material was placed under seal by a court to protect victims, and only a fraction of it would have been aired publicly, and Epstein had gone to trial, so they want you to believe. Faced with fury from the base, considering what he just said, Trump sought to quickly turn the page, shutting down questioning of Bondi about Epstein at a White House cabinet meeting when he went, "Are we still talking about Epstein?" Really embarrassing moment. And deriding at people that were actually asking about it as weakling supporters who said they were falling for the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And by the way, despite even them trying to kind of corral that narrative, he said many times the whole thing's a hoax, many times. The kerfuffle also created bitter divisions within the administration as Bondi and Bongino angrily clashed at the White House meetings last month. Oh, and remember, he was going to quit and resign, and then Kash is going to leave, and now they're back. But now Kash is going to get fired, apparently, according to everybody else. But now Kash is now alternatively saving the country. It's just 30 seconds to 30 seconds. These mainstream alternative media people will sell you on whatever makes that moment feel right. It's pretty hard to watch right now. Now, I thought this was interesting. I want to point this out. Here's Grok. Asked about, this is something in the note of why these platforms, not only should you not be listening to them at all, if using them at all, but recognize, the point is either intentionally wrong information or misleading. If you're using these platforms, you'll recognize Grok in particular, and maybe it's just me, you guys tell me, if you ask for a link, it gives you a link that does not work almost every single time. This, first of all, that's linked with every one of them mashed together, which I find interesting. But if you click individual links, it gives you stuff like this. It just seems, and I'll go in there and be like, that link is dead. Oh, sorry, here's the correct one. Nope, still a dead link. It's a side note. I just think there's a lot of social engineering going on, and they don't really want you to know this stuff. Also, the one that they give you here about the NBC link takes you here. But this is what's interesting. Look, this is the link. It literally says, for the podcast you can't see, up top it says, son of a gun. Hold on. It says, Ghislaine Maxwell's DOJ interview. You see that? But look at the article. How to watch the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Guys, this is not by mistake. Okay, there's some really heavy corralling going on right now. Look, I'll refresh it just in case you're confused. That's the link. That's the link that Grok gave me about what, but this seems to be NBC that's now redirected it, altered it. I couldn't find a Wayback Machine version of it. I find that to be insane, hilarious, but also this one. But I was able to find it by doing my own work on it, my own research, and was able to find platforms and articles that did have the information. Oh, where was that? Hold on. Did I accidentally just close that? Did I just close the page? Shoot. Hold on. I'll make sure that's in the show notes for you. This was. Damn, I must have accidentally closed it. It's just this page, but with all the transcripts. I just want to make sure you had that. Let's see if it pops up. Okay, hold on. Gosh darn it, that's frustrating. I'll include it. I don't want to take any more time. Well, I can just show you this right now. See if we can grab this. So what I did, copied the link. Make sure to get the period gone so you can see that's the full link, right? Not found. But this is what I have to do every time. It's so ridiculous. I just do like this. Oh, here. Maybe that's the one. Maybe. Let's find out. Sorry for the delay. Nope. Okay, hold on. I'm going to grab this real quick. I think I'll forget if I don't do it right now. I want you guys to have the transcripts that you can see for yourself. But here's what I did. Here's how I found it. I just had to go through the actual link and got the words that they used. And then it popped up in a regular search. See if it's still there. Yep. Okay. So here's the actual link. I don't know how I'd accidentally close that, but look what it said. Look at the link. Maxwell interview. Okay. So ask yourself, why in the world it's giving you all these random. Isn't that just the weirdest thing? I think that's by design. And you ask it damn near anything, or at least I do. And every single time without fail, the links are dead. And then you find the link and it's not even the right link. There's different words in it. I just think that's insanely stupid. Anyway, here it is. Maxwell interview. Okay. So the important points of this, first of all, is you've got transcripts and every single one of them are redacted. I don't know why we would expect anything else. Of course, victims and whatever else, which is not an unfair answer. But the point is always is that we don't get the full body of information. And what I found most important is if you take all of these day 1, day 2 audio recordings, it adds up to just over 6 hours. I went through it myself. Do it yourself. And what they tell you, 9 hours they were there. Okay, I guess you could argue that some of it time was set up or whatever else, but 3 hours of gap. I mean, I don't know. I just don't think that makes any sense. Let me close this real quick. Oh, here, make sure I've got that in there. I think I closed that earlier. Okay, that's in there now. So here is, just so you hear this, this is not new information, but just so you hear it, this is the statement they make about the proffer meeting, I think is what it's called. I have this right here. A proffered agreement. In U.S. criminal law, a proffer agreement, or what's called Queen for a Day letter, lovely, is a written agreement between a prosecutor and a defendant or prospective witness that allows the defendant or witness to give the prosecutor information about an alleged crime while limiting the prosecutor's ability to use that information against her. But you know this, we told you this, limited prosecution agreement. They got that in the beginning, okay? So here's what it says, and that don't mind the image I used. I just had to put something in to be able to download this video on here.
Today's date is Thursday, July 24th. This will be the recording of a proffer agreement of Ghislaine Maxwell from the Deputy Attorney General, DOJ, and the time is currently 9:16.
So just want to make sure you got that, right? So because even people are pushing back on the very idea that she somehow has that. So at this moment, part of the agreement is clearly that she is not able to be prosecuted for what she's telling them. I don't know why that's okay with anybody. This person is a monster, and now they're working with monsters to go after what? You point out to me what the consequence is. What is she? So she's giving information and getting a deal that lets this trafficker not go to prison. And what is the public gaining from that? I think it's pretty obvious. It seems to be nothing. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But so in this, you'll find all these recordings, and I want you guys to do it yourself and tell me what you think. Because I think 3 hours of missing audio, or a little bit under 3 hours, is just not acceptable. Period. Because I want to know what the hell was discussed. I want to know what they gave. They handed her a box of information, like a whole box that she carried back with her, and then they told us the 100 names that they asked her about. So it seems like they're coordinating some kind of response, and I don't know why you'd expect anything different from the U.S. government. Disclosed TV says Ghislaine Maxwell claims Epstein worked for any intelligence agency are BS. I mean, see, this is what's like Orwell is saying the same thing. Anyone that's worked on this case in the smallest degree knows that she's lying right now. These are things that are undeniable. Even Acosta made this point. We know he worked with intelligence. Now, look, there's two ways to look at it. He was a informant for the FBI. That's very clear. He also worked for intelligence. So these are two, but either one could be framed that way. And her to say that that's just not true, and this is in the transcript, that's ridiculous. So she's lying to you. Anyone with a brain is already aware, I should say anyone who's educated on this topic already knows that. So if you're supporting Trump, and you either have to admit that he's being played or he's lying to you. On top of that, Bill Barr testifies he didn't see info that would implicate Trump in the Epstein files behind closed doors. As Orwell writes, why is this behind closed doors? Why is all of this being done in a way that doesn't give us any real closure? I think we know why. Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly faces grave danger after mysterious break-in. Think about this, guys. This is actually ridiculous with what went down. So there's two ways you could look at this. Either she's being moved to this because she's making a deal and she's about to go free and be sort of framed as the victim, which is what Newsmax was already trying to do, like really embarrassingly, or she's being put here so she could be taken out. That's just my personal opinion, but I mean, this feels really strange. Here's what the article says. Maxwell's relocation to Texas' minimum security prison camp has stoked fresh concerns over her safety. After reports of an attempted break-in, or more than one, and a shooting inside the facility where apparently the guards don't have guns. This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And what you're going to hear is that these guards are putting themselves to, they're basically putting up a front like a military in a place that doesn't usually deal with things like that. What do you think that tells you? That either they know that something weird is happening and no one wants to help them out. I mean, it's very it speaks volumes. She was transferred to federal prison Camp Bryan following a meeting with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who had worked as Trump's defense attorney regarding Epstein's case. Now, about 1:15 a.m. on August 9th, there were reports of gunfire at the camp. The authorities first reported it as a gang-related shooting, but subsequent reports differed. The Bureau of Prisons reported that the employees reacted as if there were an active shooter situation. The Bryan police stated that there was no indication of gang activity. So the people there said there's no gang activity, but of course the Bureau of Prisons, remember the Bureau of Prisons are the ones that moved her when it was supposed to be the marshals. So there's some kind of inside thing going on here, in my opinion. Sources briefed on the incident expressed doubts about the official version of a shooting or of a reaction in a prison. The official version. So if you're talking about official versions of reports of what just happened, we're being manipulated. Describing the incident as highly suspicious. Sources briefed on this are saying what went down is very suspicious. A police report indicated a gun was fired within the campgrounds, perhaps by a guard, even though Bryan staff are generally not armed. Author Jessica Reed Krause reported on Substack that rumors within the facility suggested the event could have been an attempted break-in to attack Maxwell, but, could have been is not something I want to lean into. Another source indicated a second attempt break-in days later failed to make it to the public news. So again, I don't want to say it could have been this, could have been that, but we can engage with what it looks like and we can come to our own conclusions about it. That seems really strange to have a shooting in a place where they're usually not armed. On top of that, to have a follow-up attempted break-in that didn't even get reported. There's something going on here. Now, what that is, again, we don't know for sure, but clearly it suggests that there's something fishy because she's there. In response, security at the Bryan camp has outwardly intensified. Right, so they think something's going on. Authorities put barbed wire on fences, deployed unmarked police patrol units, and set up armed guards in rotating shifts in trucks at the entrance. Okay, a place none of that's normal for this place. So They're doing this because they think something's happening and no one's being told about this. We're getting a report from EN Stars as opposed to AP and MSNBC and CNN and Fox News. It seems pretty weird. Authorities, and then it goes on to say, guards with AR-15 rifles reportedly created barricades out of government vehicles. But yeah, just another Tuesday at Camp Bryan. An inside source expressed worry about Maxwell's destiny. It's a weird way to frame that. Stating, I think there is a high likelihood Maxwell could be killed or moved. I just don't see her walking out of there alive. Wow. Insiders informed Radar Online the increased security could be to prevent a recurrence of Epstein's 2009 suicide. Interesting way to write that. That's not what they said. They say a recurrence of Epstein's 2019 death in New York's jail, which was determined to be a suicide, but led years of conspiracy theory. Okay. Insiders informed Radar Online of increased security to prevent a suicide? I mean, you could work that out. Clearly, the insiders don't think that's what happened because you wouldn't need increased security to stop somebody killing themselves in a cell. Maybe in a sense of internal security with the cell, but that's not what they're talking about. So what this is saying is the insiders informed Radar Online that they've increased security because they think the same thing will happen here, which is somebody will kill them. I think that's very telling. This was so funny is you'll find it pretty obvious when you dig into this that pretty much everybody knows he didn't kill himself. At the highest levels, everybody you talk to, it's absurd. It's the evidence doesn't back it up. But it goes on to say Epstein's death resulted in claims of a cover-up and accusations of the Trump administration protecting influential friends associated with Epstein. It has since been hinted by some critics that Maxwell might be exposed to similar threats. Hinted. It's a blatantly obvious overlap, but it says the insider further stated, should anything happen to Maxwell, it will collapse any remaining trust in the system. Yeah, too late. And cast an indelible shadow over Trump himself. They cannot afford that. No, you know what I think? I think that would be their best case. Well, I said earlier, basically, if she was to go away, that would work out well for them, I think, regardless of how difficult it would be to cover up. But I also think the best case scenario would be for them to, basically release her, have her come out saying Trump was completely innocent, frame her as the victim, and then do an entire effort of a campaign to make you feel like a villain for trying to claim that the victim was the bad guy. Now, even though that's just not going to work for most people, it will create a life raft for those that want to support Trump, and they'll cling to it, and they'll force everybody into line. I think that is their best case scenario, which is kind of what I think was, but you never know, but it's kind of what I think is where it's leaning. Now, this is Daily Mail. Ghislaine Maxwell believes Epstein was murdered, but there's no client list, of course. Maxwell, who's serving 20 years in prison sentence, provided no incriminating information on high-profile individuals, including Trump, other than the 100 people that she sang like a canary about, according to Alex Jones. But, put that in the Alex was wrong jar that's overflowing at this point, according to the bombshell testimony released Friday afternoon. Now, I'm not suggesting that she didn't say something about 100 different people or that was what was reported. But as usual, we shouldn't take the narratives coming from government to just go, this is the reality she's saying, and they're all going to jail. Democrats, deep state is shaking in its boots, or whatever he says. The reality is that clearly they were asking about people, as it was later reported, and she spoke about people that they directed her to speak about. That's what actually went down. But clearly we don't see anything happening. Nobody's been arrested. But who knows? Maybe it'll happen tomorrow. The point is that neither does he. And the reality is that all this points to right now is coordination. It says the president was never inappropriately with anybody. In the times I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects, insisted the criminal who's likely angling for a presidential pardon, says the Daily Mail. Funny how everyone seems to see at least the general point here, but it doesn't mean he's guilty, at least in this context. But what's funny is he's lied about this many times. You can easily prove that. But her statement clearly, when she has everything to gain, that's why nobody takes it at face value. But on top of that, when I was with him is a huge carve out. Was she around every single time he was there, or the times we don't know about? I mean, clearly all it does is create a circumstance where she can get what she wants from it, but still leave an opening to where I wasn't around all the time. But it says she also revealed she has no knowledge of a so-called client list. This is just BS, guys. It's and again, they turned this into some kind of a cartoon. Like there's some kind of a one-page list of names with check boxes next to it. We're just talking about the information of people that they worked with, which we know they have, and that being You guys put it in a list for us. Give us the names of people who you're going to, or anybody you're going to arrest, because it clearly seems like nobody's going to get arrested. It says also she told Blanche in a bombshell interview that she believes another inmate may have killed Epstein and that it likely wasn't some conspiracy to avoid any blackmail. Okay. Now, you may think that's a deviation. To me, that's exactly what I'd expect. Give them something. You were right. Bongino and Patel. Well, here's what's funny, though, that in a backward way makes Bongino and Patel look like morons, but they'll still probably go, we did that to hold the line until we could release this. And now you see it all, freedom, whatever they do. But no, the point is, if you convince them that, yes, you were played, but the Democrats did it, right? They had, whatever it is. She's telling you the truth. Can't you see? It was all a big, that he was killed in prison. They lied to you about a suicide. But no list. Trump's a good guy. Like, I feel like that makes more sense than anything. Release of the hours of interviews with Maxwell come the same day that the Justice Department transmitted to Congress thousands of pages of documents related to the late child sex offender. Interesting how they come out at the same time, almost like they don't want you to look into all of the pages they just put out, because Trump told you they were fake or told you that it wasn't possible. But here they are. It says, in her July sit-down, Maxwell told investigators she may have first met Trump in 1990 through her late father, Maxwell, Robert Maxwell, who liked him very much and was fond of his first wife, Ivana Trump, because she's Czech background. When pressed about allegations, she recruited a Mar-a-Lago employee to meet Epstein. Maxwell claimed she couldn't remember, but admitted it was not impossible since she frequently approached spa workers. Okay, that's important to remember. You have to understand that what that just showed you right there is that she was recruiting people for this sexual blackmail network. And she admits this. Really what they're publicly putting out is that because of the sweetheart deal he got, that she shouldn't be allowed to be in prison. Not that she's not part of this. And they want her to get off. They want her to be free. At least what they're doing is getting her out of prison and giving her her own little sweetheart deal. And the reality is she did recruit people at spas for this disgusting human being. Maxwell's testimony acknowledges that her father, Robert Maxwell, had a background in intelligence during World War II, as a British officer, of course, totally not with Israel, and she believes he continued to help people in intelligence contexts, though he was not formally employed by the agency. My God. I mean, that needs to show you more than anything that they're trying to cultivate a very clear narrative for the establishment. She insists her father and Jeffrey Epstein never met. Wow. Her lawyers claim Maxwell was covered under a 2007 plea deal that Epstein reached with everybody we're talking about. We talked about Acosta, all these different overlapping points. They were involved with this. And then when Acosta was going to be on Trump's last administration, they asked him and he told them what he did. And they said, that's enough. Good enough for us. They told me to let him go. And what was it? They said, what'd they say? It was that they told me to back off because he's connected to intelligence. And to Trump, that was enough. He's willing to lie and pull punches for the team. That's the kind of that's the kind of person they like in the White House these days. Thomas Massey, after this political post, says DOJ to start turning over Epstein files to Capitol Hill, says after months of stonewalling, calling Epstein files a hoax and telling people nothing but porn exists in their possession, the administration now admits the files exist and agrees to release some of them. Americans want transparency, though, not smoke and mirrors. Now you know what? I forgot to grab this, I think. I'll just go off the point then. I don't want to try to grab this from Newsbreak, but Trump wants Rogan to drop the Epstein talk. All this is just Rogan rightly calling this out. It's strange. Something's wrong here. Like what they're doing does not line up. That they're covering up for this. And clearly they don't want that. I mean, they've gotten pressure from the Trump administration to pull punches, guys. I mean, that's what you're getting from everybody else in this team sport politics field. Like you can't counter signal the leader is the whole thing, right? I find it very telling though, that they're getting people from all sides of the paradigm that are seeing what's going on. But don't worry though, guys, don't worry because they got the grand sandwich caper all figured out. Okay. This guy went to jail. So it's all about freedom and democracy these days, right? They got the sandwich guy. So it's okay. They made all these statements and, we got him. And it's just, that's what they're doing for you right now. Tracking down the sandwich thrower, but letting the Epstein clients go, letting the Epstein associates go, working with Zionism and committing a genocide and, lying to you through every single Maha point, but they got the sandwich guy. Freedom. So overlapping these points, let's talk about the interesting invasive AI control structure that's being built with things like this, right? Using coercive measures like that and many other versions that exist today that you don't see that are currently filling the pockets or coercing people in our government. They're building out this control structure, which, by the way, at this point, most of them probably already supported anyway because they gained power from it. But as Jason Bassler points out, let me get this straight. Trump now has the power to wield Palantir, tracking my every move, logging my every text, merging health, tax, and social security data into an AI model to predict my behavior. Not Epstein's clients, not deep state criminals, me. How does that make any sense? And the meme says, or the image, my clients are still free to abuse children with zero fear of consequences. I mean, really think a second to think about this. Or how about aiming it at aliens with legal status that violated a traffic stop? I mean, by and large, that is what we're talking about, regardless of the pushback, regardless of people that go, la, I don't want to hear that. That's not true because that's a Democrat lie. It's the truth. The facts, the data clearly back it up. Coming from this administration. The reality is they're going after people that are not who they're claiming. They're not getting the worst of the worst. They're not getting the Tren de Aragua gang members. They're not getting the MS-13 leaders. They're lying to you, and everywhere you look, you can prove that. And this is what they're using. I mean, this is what's so important is the Epstein problem really did create the awareness around a lot of other things, which is partly why they want this to go away. Well, let's not forget in regard to the overarching security apparatus, everything we're talking about, hundreds of former Israeli, and of course, former in major air quotes, hundreds of former Israeli spies are working in big tech. That's Palantir, that's Google, that's Meta, that's all of it, guys. You can quite literally prove this. And we'll have some points to make about it. And more so, by the way, in tomorrow's show. Now, in the idea of the AI government direction or any just AI use in government, in control structures, it's very important to see that this is where it's going. We all know this. They're being very clear about this today. But let's not forget that, I mean, even during COVID, even at the beginning of this administration, the conversation of AI being rolled out in government was, you were called a conspiracy theorist by Republicans. And here we are. Now it's being rationalized as the necessity because bad China. But it's just funny how clear these things can be. And when you are ahead of a story, in most cases, the real independent media, it's there's a detriment to being ahead of a story unless you're in the mainstream alternative media today. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it anyway, like we do. The truth is what matters. Get the information out so people can see it. But this is where it's going. On top of the overlap with the transhumanist, technocratic direction that's all kind of intertwined. The Stargate platform, one big example of that with OpenAI, Sam Altman, Larry Ellison, Oracle, SoftBank, Israel in connection. I mean, and Larry Ellison being a huge part of this. Like they're literally building out this apparatus. We can all see it. Read these articles. You'll find out a hell of a lot more. But the whole transhumanist overlap to all this is an important part of this to think about. Because this AI structure that they're talking about is not just about surveillance, guys. There's so many other moving parts. And one of them is legitimately talking about this fourth industrial revolution, right? The bio-digital convergence. Now, again, these are not fringe ideas, guys. These are like as mainstream as they can get. They just don't talk about it. I've gone over these points many times. I actually just talked about it again with Charlie today, I think. But this is where we come to at this point. Is that this is not even removed from, this is Elon Musk publicly discussing the merging of you and technology. And now I'll play some overlapping points to it, but here's what he just said. As David Icke says about the statement, Elon Musk, the AI skeptic, as he tried to frame, remember he tried to frame himself as AI is going to kill us all, and then was the one that essentially rolled it out, tells you what his game has been all along, and X, Twitter, is his vehicle to sell it to the masses on behalf of the cult that owns him and Trump. Here's what he said.
Vision for a society where human effort is no longer required for survival or productivity. How do we avoid irrelevance?
Right, I think that's the central question. Well, if we are symbiotic with AI, where there's this essentially a merger of human and machine intelligence, then we may be able to address the relevance question. Like let's say you ride a bicycle or a motorcycle or a car. You're superhuman in what you're able to do. you can now travel faster than any human with legs. I mean, if you're in a car, you can go vastly faster than the fastest human ever. Does that make running irrelevant? I mean, people still run, and still race against each other. So, but you've got humans working with machines. I mean, they actually had these kind of debates when the steam engine came along, and the steam shovel. It's like, well, because people derived a lot of their value from saying they can do manual work faster than a machine, and then the machine got faster. But this is a philosophical question that I struggle with, and the best thing I can come up with is that you have interwoven human and machine intelligence, and got something like Neuralink to augment human intelligence and improve the symbiosis with AI, that we effectively become maybe one with the AI.
Not very hard to understand. Now, look, as always, it doesn't have to be some hyperbolic thing. Who's to say if maybe he genuinely thinks that's what's best for the world? Maybe he genuinely thinks that's going to do this. Or, who knows? Doesn't always have to be some dark supervillain discussion. But the point is that this is not what people want. I mean, that seems to be pretty by and large the reality, but that's my opinion. You can decide for yourself. But what do you think? Do you want this inevitable future where they're telling you where we have to? I mean, look, this is my point. This is not new. This is the same old thing that was being pushed during the Great Reset.
What the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
The difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take genetic editing, right. Just as an example, it's you who are changed. Yeah. And of course, this has a big impact on your identity. Yeah.
It is important to use the COVID-19 crisis as a timely opportunity. So people assume we are just going back to the good old world which we had, and everything will be normal again in how we are used to normal, in the old fashion. This is, let's say, fiction. It will not happen. The cut which we have now is much too strong in order not to leave traces.
Pretty clear. That's exactly what he's talking about. The merging, the symbiosis between the technology and biology, right? So James Corbett's talked about this. This is the Canadian version, exploring biodigital convergence from 2020. The main point, biodigital and digital systems are converging and could change the way we work, live, and even evolve as a species. Right. Well, just like this one from 2002, converging technologies for improving human performance. This is what Klaus was pointing to. Nanotechnology, bio, information, cognitive, all coming together. This is the National Science Foundation, Department of Commerce, the U.S. government. And the point is, read through this for yourself, 424 pages. This is what I covered here. Government doc from 2002 revealed 20-year plan to alter evolution with nanotechnology. That puts it right about 2022. Plenty of things you could piece together with that. The overarching point, though, is that this is where this is driving toward. That's what he's pointing to, whether he even realizes it or not. And on top of that, interestingly enough, this is one we've talked about, even though this page is now different. You can see it used to say virus-sized transistors. Now it says something weird. That's weird. They still leave the typo in there. They like rapidly changed this and left a typo. It seems so funny. But that if you remember this post from Charles Lieber, 2011, about nanotechnology, here's what it says. That when something is as small as a virus or bacteria, a man-made structure, it can behave the way biology does, the way biological structures do. That's interesting, right? It's sort of like the same conversation, right? I'm telling you, there's all of this leads into, and of course, Charles Lieber, Bob Langer, they all converge around the COVID-19 timeframe. So there's definitely something around this, but that's not the conversation for today. The point is back to the I'll include this one too. AI direction, the AI control infrastructure. Study finds 6G wireless technology could use humans as a power source. Doesn't this sound like right out of the Matrix, some kind of dystopian movie? It's not that far-fetched. This is 2023. Simply says, results show people are actually the best medium for amplifying the coil's ability to collect leaked RF energy. Attaching the coil to a person collected up to 10 times more energy than using a bare coil. Based on these results, the researchers created an inexpensive wearable device. Hey, that's the whole new thing, right? Called the Bracelet Plus, which people can wear on their upper forearm. Study authors note they can even modify it to work as a ring, belt, anklet, necklace, although the bracelet seemed to work the best for the harvesting power. Isn't that a little weird red bracelet? Don't we see a lot of those swinging around? Not to throw out another theory, but the point, first of all, is this is not some hypothetical. This is a real conversation about 6G wireless tech, basically turning your body into a battery. Now, this is old conversation. They've been there's many overlaps to make it more connecting to the 6G, though. That's the real point here. How AI will drive 6G and why AI needs 6G to meet increasing demands. So this is the point. This is how this seems to play out. Now, it doesn't have to be some horrifying Matrix thing where you don't even, it could very well be something like this one right here. Remember this? Oh, we'll see. I hope it pops up. Oh, of course not. Oh, maybe that's this one right here. This is yeah, good. This is the one. Thank you for Miss Cuniverse for having this pop up in a search. But you've seen this before. We've talked about it, right? This is a Microsoft patent. Oh, this is not the patent page I'm used to. The point, though, is the patent, Microsoft patent, to see if it loads, is about you turning your body. Yeah, this is it. Cryptocurrency system using body activity data. Now, the things like this require the Y-band, the wireless body area network, which requires the Internet of Bio-Nano things. And, it's all coming together. And this is about using your body's actions to gain cryptocurrency. You're gamifying your literal body. But you think it's just about that? This is the same conversation, right? So it's about creating a rationale for allowing your body to be used in this way. Your wireless body area network, whatever it is. So this is really important. Now, we're going to do more deep on this. And also tomorrow, one of the things I really want to get into, not just the Israel conversation, but the Freedom City, Smart City overlap, which we've talked about in a couple shows recently, but much deeper in where this is going and who's interconnected with it. It's all the people we're talking about. The same people funding Prospera, the same Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, Inner Circle, those in particular funding Prospera are the lead people pushing the Freedom City conversation. The point is that all this ties in with the same thing. How AI will drive 6G and why AI needs 6G to meet increasing demands very well could mean that they need we talked about the nanotechnology point, right? About the idea of your body as a power source. That goes back decades. That's DARPA for you. Not new information. Include this. Oh, here's David Icke. Something else that I was laughed at and banned for now being confirmed as true. Oh, yeah. Self-assembly nanobots. Yeah, he's right. But important. Oh, actually, shout out to Miss Qverse. I'm just going to include the patent so you guys can look at it for yourselves. Now, all this being said, I don't want to remember these. Here is Peter Thiel. Billionaire tech investor Peter Thiel has warned that the greatest threat to humanity's future might not be nuclear war, climate change, or artificial intelligence. Let's be clear, that was the one he wanted to say, but rather the emergence of a global one world government that exploits these crises as a justification to seize total control. Gee, that's new. Not like he's involved in exactly that. And I said, says the globalist technocrat seeking to build a global one-world government that exploits crises as justification to seize total control. This is how stupid they think we are. Please prove them wrong, guys. And this is just a funny overlap. True Stream Media pointed to that. It's kind of, as I said, kind of hilarious but terrifying at the same time. But just don't let that go by without acknowledging how insane that is. Though, I mean, what they're building out is literally what they're pointing to. This is how this tends to work. or at least how it seems their I guess their last ditch effort, the current U.S. government direction and Zionist direction is to just kind of like bluntly yell at you the opposite. Like just their propaganda seems weak today. Here's the clip about this. Really brings it together. You've seen part of this where he talks about, should the human species survive? This is just a kind of a humorous overlap to it where they include a second part. You should watch the full interview, by the way. But this will speak for itself.
Peter, you've been doing great so far. Just some layup questions ahead, and let's bring this home.
I think you would prefer the human race to endure, right?
No way.
You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes.
I don't know. I would.
Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes.
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in
this. Should the human race survive?
God, man.
Yes. The only answer is yes.
Yes.
Great.
But
I'm sorry that the video's out of sync. It's infuriating. I can't do anything about it. I don't know why it happens. It ruins this clip, by the way, that it's out of sync.
Fuck.
I also would like us to radically.
That wasn't me cussing, by the way. That was the video.
The answer is yes.
Yes.
Great.
But
fuck.
I also would like us to radically solve these problems.
Right.
And so
what is he talking? What is he talking about?
Yeah, transhumanism. Human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body.
This is real.
And there's a critique of, let's say, the trans people in a sexual context, or I don't know, transvestite is someone who changes their clothes and cross dresses. We want more than cross dressing or changing your sex organs. We want you to be able to change your heart and change your mind, your whole body. And then Orthodox Christianity.
So aside from the ridiculously out of sync audio, which made it impossible to see what was happening, thank you, censorship and technocracy. The point is that it's an overlap of his interview and when asked about should the human species survive, and it took him like a minute and a half to or whatever, just an absurd amount of time to answer yes after pausing and asking 3 different times, but then goes on to talk about how, transhumanism, guys, no big deal. Is obviously where this all goes. The clip was just supposed to be funny, but that got ruined by the out of sync audio where there's a guy in the background, basically his handler going like, okay, you got this. And then being like floored. What an easy layup question that he ruined. I mean, it's kind of a funny way to put framing to put over it. Here's Disclosed TV. New tech bro transhumanist billionaire Peter Thiel will hold a 4-part lecture series on the Antichrist starting September 15th at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco. Put in this hashtag go for discounts. Just what the heck on the Antichrist. Now look, you can. It's a content. It's a topic. It's like doing a symposium on Nazis or something. Like people would talk about any number of things, and there's a place for whatever. People can talk about whatever. Not my point is that saying like somehow it's like saying somebody talking about. Whatever. What's a topic today where people just go, that's not allowed. You're not allowed to discuss that. That should never be the case. What's weird to me is with this overlap with where this goes, with that kind of a question, it seems like a really weird thing to do. The Antichrist, a 4-part lecture series. Now, that feels strange for a lot of reasons. One of them being that this is something that is kind of an overlapping conversation swirling around these like elitists, megalomaniac technocrats, transhumanist technocrats who like literally in some places believe like they're going to become gods through this path. So it just feels off. On top of the idea with the overlap of that coming from the Zionist influence, of which they are all a part. It's just a little too much for me. On top of that, we have Larry Ellison. You've seen this. Billionaire Larry Ellison says a vast AI-fueled surveillance system can ensure citizens will be on their best behavior. Right, so as they're rolling out their vast AI-fueled surveillance system and they're putting in their martial elements in place across the country, is this what you wanted? Is this what you voted for? Is this what the mandate was for? I'm really at a loss for how there's not far more conservatives like screaming about how wrong this is. There's plenty of them, trust me, but I'm surprised it's not the entire country. It's insane how obvious all this is. And because you point to a Democrat city or immigrants at large, somehow this stuff just doesn't matter. I mean, that either means you fundamentally don't understand what you're fighting for, or you're not a very bright person, in my opinion. But here's Larry Ellison saying this.
Will be on their best behavior because we're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior. because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And it's unimpeachable. The cars have cameras on them. We have police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching. And
Okay.
recording
Okay. God darn it. Sorry, guys. There's something really wonky going on back here. It doesn't even matter.
someplace. But those kind of applications using AI, if we can use AI, and we're using AI to monitor the video. So if that altercation that occurred in Memphis, the chief of police would be immediately notified. It's not people that are looking at those cameras, it's AI that's looking at the camera. No, you can't do this. It would be like a shooting. That's going to be immediately, that's going to be an event that's immediately, an alarm's going to go off, it's going to be, and we're going to have supervision. In other words, every police officer is going to be supervised at all times.
Of course, the unspoken point is that's you too. And that's not even debatable. Like the only way, like with many of the points they're putting forward, and he does say this in many of other points, it's about mass surveillance all the time. Palantir's already doing it.
And the supervision will, and if there's a problem, AI will report the problem and report it to the appropriate person, whether it's the sheriff or the chief or whomever we need to take control of the situation. We have, same thing. We have drones. We just, if there's something going on in a shopping center, and I'll stop. A drone goes out there, get there way faster than a police car. There's no reason for, by the way, high-speed chases. You shouldn't have high-speed chases between cars. You just have a drone follow the car. I mean, it's very, very simple. And the new generation of autonomous drones.
And as, what does it say? Read it closely. Noxie points out, are you willing to sacrifice your liberty for security? Same point from before. That's all that really comes down to, guys. These things are fundamentally counter to the ideals what we pretend this country is. Whether it's about the right to privacy, security, like any number of our constitutional rights that are being violated, violated, but not observed. That means you're accepting something that is unconstitutional because you think it's going to have a positive outcome. That means you are un-American in the most quintessential sense. Not somebody who decides to point out a fault of our government or criticize Israel. No, somebody who is actively bringing in a dystopian state while screaming freedom. It's like, it's counterintuitive right now everywhere you look. Now, Palantir obviously is a major part of this. I'll just include this as when we mention it, because it's a great article Derek put together to kind of give you the overview of where this goes, called the Welcome to the Palantir World Order. But keeping Palantir in mind, and let's make it clear again for the millionth time, despite the inaccurate framing from the people that don't want to talk about this conversation, nobody here is trying to say that Palantir is the only thing going on or that Palantir is the only part of what this is. It's just a very, very, very visible aspect, or rather, it's a central part, but a very visible central part of what this is. Like that's why it's so important to point out. It's undeniable. When you have even the New York Times pointing out things, and it's not because they said it that we reported it. We were calling this out well before that got discussed. I argue it's because independent media talked about it that they were forced to cover it. But it's so mainstream, they're scooping up of data, the overlap with Israel, the ongoing genocide. I mean, the Palantir is a central part in the worst things happening in the world today, whether it's your surveillance, the lack of your privacy, the ongoing genocide, on and on and on. These things matter, but that doesn't mean they're the only part of it, right? But it's the easiest part to get the average person to be able to recognize. And Jason Bassler points out, when 13 employees walk away from Palantir and say this, we should listen. Quote, Palantir is increasingly complicit, normalizing authoritarianism under the guise of a revolution led by oligarchs. We must resist this trend. And he writes, Broligarchs promise revolution but deliver chains. Now, see, the game is to go, oh, Democrats leaving. No, it's people from all walks of life are calling this out. Just like we saw, like when they said, oh, it's just Democrats that are fighting for, Palestine. Nope. We pretty clearly can see that it's people who are just not stupid. Left, right, Jew, Muslim, Christian, all of them. Same point here. People that are recognizing this problem are not unique to one partisan side or the other. It's really people that are able to see beyond it, quite frankly. But the reality is Palantir is a major part of this. Now, again, like it just by what I was saying before is also not to make it sound like it's not the claim this is some small Democrat thing is so embarrassing. It's insulting to your intelligence. Palantir is one of the largest companies in this country, at the very least, if not the world. It is massive. And it is ongoing connection to everything AI related surveillance in this country is the kind of power that you gain from that is it's hard to even fathom. JP Morgan, on that last point, reportedly had to oust a security chief backed by Palantir after executives found out he was spying on them. No big deal, right? No big deal. You got a Palantir element that's spying on inside of the banking industry. No, it just shows you what's going on. Like to me, what this shows you, seeing as how JP Morgan is about as mainstream as it gets, is that we're watching different things happen. Like this is not just all, this is either like, think of it like this globalist, Zionist kind of agenda that I think is clearly overtaking this country. Doesn't have control of everything. I mean, it's just one way to look at it. You can decide what this means to you, but first it just shows you that they're invading everything, infiltrating, spying on everything. But the end, what it really highlights for me is that this is the changing of power. When really JP Morgan and Palantir should be on the same team. In this case, it seems like there's at some level not. I mean, this is just a surface level kind of overview, kind of trying to take away from what you can from the title. You can read it. There's more to it. The point that I'm trying to highlight here is that this is, I mean, this is the article I think is always is most important to read from this or to read about this. As you know, I think this is a transition of power. The new Trump administration and the technocratic Zionist coup of the United States. Honestly, one of the most obvious things I think I've ever seen. So we know that this is developed well beyond the surveillance of just, in ways that are hard to even map right now. But of course, the immigration part of it, as I've shown many times, is obviously what has the most traction, let's say, within the narratives. Palantir's Immigration OS fuels Trump administration's immigrant removal agenda, which now is clearly being shown in the conversation of even the Washington, D.C. National Guard point. So whether that's because that excuse gets more traction or because it's really both of them at the same time, it's all the same agenda is the real point. We'll get to D.C. in a second. True Street Media. This will be used against people cheering it on, and walls are also built to keep people in. U.S. Homeland Security will acquire advanced iris biometric scanning technology from BI Squared technology to ICE to identify individuals in seconds from virtually anywhere. Tech that was trained by on Palestinians from the IDF. Very easy to prove, by the way. This and plenty of other things that ICE is currently using were first tested on people in Gaza by the Israeli military. Of course, funded by your tax dollars, because that's how this whole structure works, apparently. Here's a clip from the UK, but it's the same point happening here. Big Brother Watch pointing out how they're now using your passport photos to train their AI as well. There's just nothing off the table at this point, guys, and they're driving us into this, and it's not about your security. It's only about control.
Far off from people being dragged out of their beds in the middle of the night because the computer has said they've done something which they haven't.
British passport and immigration databases are being used by the police for mass facial recognition searches. So when we went to a passport office and told people their personal data was being used for surveillance, it's no surprise what the public thought of this.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good thing. And I think use of kind of AI to do stuff like that we're going into quite dangerous territory.
Yep, I think everybody feels that way. Let's not forget that Palantir is also very present in the UK.
Just going to be the average person who's just going to be dragged in for something because you look like somebody or you're in a place or something, whereas the people who they are after, they haven't got their passport.
The government think that they can, run around and do whatever they want pertaining to these images, and it doesn't seem fair, it doesn't seem just. I would say it doesn't even seem legal.
I don't know whether the statistic that we are the most watched people in the world correct. I have no access to that kind of verified information, but I could see that we are certainly in a top maybe 10.
Now, obviously, that's debated by, the UK is clearly one of the top for sure, but it's hard to tell these days with all the shifting momentum of the last year, and just in general before that. I mean, you could even argue that a place like Gaza, for example, is far more surveilled because, of many reasons, but it's hard to tell, but very much so in that case. But the overlap, it just shows you this is an ongoing point around the world. Derek Bros points out, surprise, surprise, the Trump administration has found yet another backdoor in the digital IDs. Let's not forget digital IDs being like a central kind of connective tissue between these worlds. Like this needs to be rolled out for them to be able to control the world they want to build. That's what they would write out for you. Like this, of course, because freedom and democracy and fighting bad guys, it's about control. Will MAGA oppose it, he writes, or will they make excuses since it's not a vaccine passport? I mean, we just literally talked about this, by the way. Let me see where that was. Basically a reverse, stupid thing, reverse vaccine passport, right? So I grab that really quickly. A little further back, I guess. I'll come back to it. But the point is that there's in a lot of different ways, whether it's the SAVE Act and the Real ID point, it's all very clearly driving you in this direction. So this says, the Treasury, the current Trump administration, is seeking comments on the implementation of digital identities for DeFi, where smart contracts could automatically check for a credential before executing a user transaction. Now, yes, you're going to go, oh, but it's just that one thing. Yes, it's just like any of the rest of it. It's an incremental, boiling frog, technocratic tiptoe to get you in the door. Only in this category, so you're more used to it. But at what point does that become most transactions when they roll out the stablecoin, totally not CBDC version, which is just as bad, if not far, far worse? It's all driving you in this direction. So I agree with Derek entirely. Like this is just one more step. Whatever the narrative is, it's always going for the solution is the same. They'll choose new problems to drive you there, but the solution is what they're really trying to accomplish. And this is just something to include. It's everywhere you look. Infant ID, early childhood identification, getting them now so they can't push back, right? Oh, that's just required by the hospital. Like you're creating the biometric system when they're coming out of the womb. If you're not concerned about this by now, I really don't think you know what's going on. I'm not trying to say that just having identification is inherently the problem. It's the way this stuff is used. And if we can't be students of history by now and just look over the last 20 years and you have enough information to know that this is a problem. This puts it over the top for me. Jessica Rojas put this out. I mean, guys, this is just over this is the kind of thing that how's the best way to frame this? One, it's just terrifying to see what they're doing to your children. The kind of, and even just from like a data mining operation, but way beyond that, when we know the kind of dark elements that kind of dampen out of the child protective services or the school system or the Catholic Church or any number, because people gravitate towards children when they're predators. We just know that same way sociopaths gravitate towards power in Congress. It's the way the world works. The point is that this is showing you that it's been going on for a really long time and the people don't talk about this because why? Convenience. Well, they've got iPads now and they can use this in research. I mean, I remember when I was trained on Apple computers when I was in elementary school, they just let us go play Oregon Trail. And I think it was all just about normalizing you with the computer, which even then you could argue was just, maybe the teachers are like, good, it'll help them in the future. But my point is that now it's gotten to a point to where they're being handed iPads and there's certain like corporate infrastructure around basically where they have like a group you can hire that comes in and here's the iPads and we'll monitor what they're doing and we'll give them curriculums and how to research. I mean, it's all happening. And what it turns out is that in that realm, they're taking everything. Biometrics, they're taking what they're listening while they talk. They're recording information. They're scanning the biometrics. They're what's the other part of it? Looking at what they search online, looking at what they do, what they say. It's all being cataloged and probably used for God knows what, but most obviously it's being sold to people like Palantir. How is that not an immediate violation of the constitutional rights? It is. Let's be clear. It is. But nobody seems to care right now.
You have no idea what's happening in schools. I don't think most parents or even teachers realize how deep this goes. Since 2019, kids have been tracked the moment they log into their school devices. Their emotions, behavior, diagnosis, their race and gender,
that's the part I forgot, you see. And one of the most important, their emotions, their heartbeat, the way they it's so dystopian, and it's your children. Nobody gave them a permission to do any of this. So think about what else they're doing to your children, to you, and with no concern about being honest about it, especially today.
act the moment they log into their school devices. Their emotions, behavior, diagnosis, their race and gender, every click, every search is recorded and handed over to tech companies without your consent. I was a teacher for over 5 years. I resigned mid-year because I could not in good conscience remain in the system any longer. I have a master's in education and I'm currently earning my PhD right now. And I'm telling you, this goes deep. Programs like HMH, Amplify, Dreambox, Panorama, Class Dojo, Success Ed, all of this, Khan Academy, they're backed by billionaires like Gates, Bezos, Zuckerberg. You can literally Google this info.
You have to understand this then is from the, again, the government. But of course, because people want to pretend they're different, currently the Trump administration completely supports this. Elon Musk and the rest came out with the idea of the AI education. I mean, AI everything is what's happening. But you need to start seeing this as just one entity, guys. Like if we can just get past the childish binary political conversation, we can really see something, because it's very clear the moment that we start seeing them as just one government trying to manipulate your life, that everything changes. It's starting to happen. You can see how desperate they get, but we have to lean into that. The point is clearly that the current administration is absolutely in support of this, but the bigger point is it's just all of your government, all of them.
These are so much more than just educational tools. They are surveillance systems, collecting data on your children. Schools sign contracts as your child's parent under a loophole, a legal loophole. And tech companies are legally considered school officials. That means they can track and collect everything.
Doesn't that sound familiar to having them suddenly be lieutenant colonels in the military, or suddenly being everything in power that matters? We're watching the transition take place. It's all happening right in front of you, in my opinion.
This is not education anymore. It is data mining. It is manipulation and exploitation. And I refuse to stay silent. Protect your kids. Ask hard questions. The system is not broken. It was built this way. That's why it's still operating from the same factory model it was originally designed in during the Industrial Revolution. The system is not meant to nurture your children.
She's talking about the Prussian model we've referenced many times.
It is meant to box them in, label them, silence them, and pump out obedient workers.
Exactly. Exactly. That is the term you need to remember. Obedient workers. That's what this is really about. It's not hard to look up. I learned this from James Corbett. It's a Prussian model with a P that was used to create obedient workers, right? So it's the same point they make about our medical system. It's based on triage, guys. It's literally based on get them just good enough to go back out into the war that we just never evolved from, or largely because it's more profitable or more, controllable or more manipulated. This is what we're talking about. It's everywhere you look right now. It's just, we need to start being honest with ourselves about what this is and stop letting half the government perception of it stop you from acknowledging the full problem. That's all that keeps happening. As long as you see it as only part of the government, we'll never truly solve anything, which is clearly by design. So overlapping a few last points on the AI, let's not forget Texas AI centers, and it's just AI in general, data centers. This is one example. In Texas, guzzles 463 million gallons. Now residents are asked to cut back on showers, right? Or in the place that Elon's doing, they're being told they might not be able to keep their property rights, or, their water's not working, or it's all over the world. This is happening. And they don't care about your interests, right? But it's just recognizing that this is all one part of the larger growing problem. Right. So they need, going even back to the point of how the 6G changes kind of the way that the power structure works. Right now, it's not sustainable what they're driving toward. So there are going to be massive shifts, whether that's in a reduction of the population, whether that's in some new technological growth. Something needs to give. They know that. I talked about this in this conversation. And it's really, this one was more so about the overlap of this conversation in the moment, which was about the potential of weather modification, but this was weather manipulation for AI. The point was, we can prove that it's the amazing amount of water that's used and the unsustainable nature of what they're doing. And the question was whether or not weather could be manipulated in order to create more rain for that purpose. And we're watching record floods. We're watching record rainfall across the country, like unparalleled. So it's up for you to decide. The point, though, is that this conversation is shockingly real. And I feel like we're being driven into this with no consideration for how it affects the lives of people in this country. Here's an interesting clip from Wall Street Apes. Get ready for your electricity bills to skyrocket. And guess who's buying up a lot of American electric utility companies? BlackRock and Blackstone, right? Because they're the good guys now, apparently. Here's what this guy has to say about it.
So private equity firms BlackRock and Blackstone are both in the process of acquiring their first electric utility companies. BlackRock is buying one based out of Minnesota for a little over $6 billion, and they provide services to right around 100,000 people. Blackstone is buying a utility company in New Mexico for just over $11 billion. And why is private equity starting to get into electricity companies? Well, let me share a little insight with you. PSEG, which is an electric company out of New Jersey, just reported its first quarters of 2025 to be up 47% over last year. They claim that 90% of this energy usage is from AI and data centers. Let that sink in, people. Your energy bills are going to go through the roof.
Yeah, so look at it this way. At least with this point, you're subsidizing the growth of AI. Not through your tax dollars, but through your bills that you think are reflective of your personal engagement. The electric company out of New Jersey reported the first quarter 2025 to be up 47% over last year. They claim 90% of the energy usage was from AI and data centers. This is spinning out, and it's. I don't think there's a concern about the interest is. Look at it this way. Here's an interesting parallel. The whole false climate change narrative from the left about how we have to do this now, we're all going to die. It's the same kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily false, but disingenuous narrative from the right, which really just all of them, to be honest, left and right, the government, about how we need to get to this first before China, to the AI, which driving there at all costs, no matter about how it affects everybody. That's the same kind of idea, right? Whether even that is the real endpoint or not, or maybe they're even working with China. We should be asking these questions. At the end of the day, they're not concerned with your situation. So if you're out there leaning into these directions because you think the Trump administration has your interest at heart, I have a bridge to tell you. Now, on the end point of the AI, research psychiatrist warns that he's seeing a wave of AI psychosis. Now, something that I'm probably going to go into more in a future show, just the idea of what that means, says he has an intriguing theory for why it's happening. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could look at this. The idea of what this is doing to your mind, the way you view the world. And even then through that, algorithmic manipulation on steroids, it makes sense to me. Doctors warn AI is speed running very vulnerable minds into full-blown psychosis. David Icke says that's been the idea all along on the road to the full-blown zombie hive mind. You think there's no electrical frequencies coming off the phones and other tech that are rewiring your brain. That's what Catherine talks about in regard to the neuroscience. How does the brain process information and perception electrically? I agree with this. Or it could just be a byproduct of them not concerned with how these experiments affect the way you view the world or how you feel, just like with COVID-19. Now, in real life, in real time, in the middle of this conversation, we see the enforcement taking place. Now, of course, you could argue they're different. You could argue what's happening in immigration before we even get to DC is it's its own thing. Maybe it is. I tend to think these are all moving parts to the implementation of what's coming. And what this is about, whether it's normalizing you with just authoritarian policing, martial law enforcement for what's clearly coming, or it's just about trying to shut down certain voices, or both, right? I mean, we can see this all playing out in front of us. The bottom line is that what this stuff is so shockingly counter to what we pretend this country is, what Republicans claim they're fighting for. It just pains me to watch people support. I mean, let's be clear. It pains me to watch people who, genuine people who are just played by people in partisanship, support something that is counter to what they believe in. Violent. It's counter to their principles. It just pains me to watch that because there are plenty of good people in this that just are being manipulated. To watch something like this play out. And then have people turn around and go, oh, they shouldn't be here in the first place, without even realizing that the person was here legally that they're talking about. That's just the reflexive response. Well, they're criminals. Well, no, they're not. In many of the cases we're talking about. even if it was just a few of them and it was 90%, it's still wrong, guys. They're still violating people's rights. But the reality is, it is by and large, the majority of this conversation is unconstitutional. And we just have to start being honest about that. This case, something we talked about on Fine Points, is unreal to me. Not only did these federal agents open fire on a car full of a family, because I think they just got mad, to be quite honest, but they didn't introduce themselves. They didn't have a warrant. They circled this car. Now, it's not like, again, the reality was not that they knew for sure. You can prove it the way it ended up. They went after the guy, probably from profiling, which is just undeniable at this point. They're doing that without any there's no legal reason. They're going after somebody because they might be an illegal immigrant. In many of the cases we're going to show you, they didn't listen when the guy said, no, I'm a citizen, and beat him up, arrested them anyway, until they ended up proving they were, because that's the current legal system we have, guilty until proven innocent, left or right, by the way. But in this case, surrounded the car, demanded they open the door, and the guy says, for what reason? What's your justification? Now, you realize, even if they're going after this guy because they know he's an illegal immigrant, the reality is you are still coming up to a car and you are still legally required to present some kind of justification. We do have a system here, regardless of how the people claiming they want to build that system are the ones that are seemingly not caring about it. It does matter. Sort of like illegal immigrants also having constitutional rights. I know that really frustrates you, but it is the provable legal reality. So in this case, when they do this, and then they proceed to bash the windows in, and the guy drives away because he doesn't know what's going on, whether or not they've got police on their vest, the reality is legally they're required to identify themselves and give you some kind of identification. And in most cases, present some kind of a warrant if you are coming after somebody from a pre-existing situation. So let's watch this for ourselves, and then we'll go over to the second part of the story that makes it all the more clear, which is what they did later around this person's house. So you see, they come up to the door. Now, before this, they circle the car. There's no justification. They don't know why they're there. And you can clearly see that they've got police vests on, right? It doesn't change the reality that you're not required to open the door because they demand it, guys. That's not the law. And so they ask, what for? What's going on?
No le abras. Why? No le abras. No le abras. No la puedo abrir. ¿Por qué?
¿Por qué? Why? Why? What's going on?
What do you want? What do you want? Identification.
Roll down your windows. Right? So that's what you get in this new kind of Stasi America. Okay, we just you do what I say, or we're going to hurt you. We're going to violate your property. We're going to violate your constitutional rights. All of those apply.
Let's go. Hold down the window. No, la voy a abrir.
Okay, so they break the window right there. Now you can very clearly see, which has now been shown by multiple angles, there's nobody in front of the car. Okay, there's nobody that's in front of the car. There's nobody they drive away. Now, the important story here, or overlapping point, is to remember that there has been, at least in my own experience, I've seen online 5 different examples of people being caught faking or pretending to be ICE. It's obvious why somebody would do that right now, because everyone can see that no one's identifying themselves, that they're wearing masks, and they're not giving warrants. Of course, then someone's going to go, perfect. I'm going to go buy a $3 ICE vest off Amazon, and I'm going to go rob some people, which, by the way, has happened. There's been a rape. There's been a robbery. I've been reporting on these. So that's why the reality there is applied, where they're required to identify themselves. That's the whole reason. On top of it, that if somebody does do something wrong, then you have a name to report. That doesn't change because they suddenly are mad about immigration, okay? So the bottom line is that was a violation in and of itself. And if there's already legal reasons for why people don't trust just because they show up with a vest on that they're police, which there are, everything he did is within the law, which is going to come out if there's any legal justice in the world. So he drives away.
Hey, you can't do that.
So it's very clear. Nobody.
What do you want? Identification.
Now this is just going back from a different angle.
No, la voy a abrir. Hey, you can't do that.
Okay. Okay, you saw for yourself. There's nobody there. They opened fire. Okay, they know that there's a woman, a son, and a smaller person, a child in the car. And two of them opened fire on that car. Like, I just don't understand why we can't all be very honest about how insane that is. Regardless of your political side, regardless of what that's so far over the top. If your argument is that you would prefer that they just open fire on hit whoever they can because he might be a legal immigrant, I'd love to hear somebody try to make that argument in front of a crowd. Stand up and give me your logical reason for why they should open fire on a family in a car because that guy might be an illegal immigrant. There's people out there actually making these arguments. That's the kind of people we point out. Those are the cheerleaders out there. No matter what Trump does, it's the best thing in the world. Just like the woke morons on the left do the same thing for Biden. Same woke morons on the right. So it just continues. So he drives home, okay? He drives home, and that's where we'll pick up the story. Well, I think that we went over most of this. The Border Patrol officers opened fire during a targeted immigration enforcement operation on Saturday, calling it an act of self-defense after a man struck two officers. Now, they claim it's a targeted effort, right? Well, you'll find it very interesting how this ends up. But the family inside the car said they drove away after fear for their safety after masked men emerged from unmarked cars, which they were, and surrounded their truck with weapons drawn. Again, I'll be the first to tell you that it's pretty common sense that you can argue they probably at least thought it was likely these were cops. But if there's a chance that there are people out there, or just look, we don't have to play the game. The law requires them to identify themselves. The law requires them to give you some justification. You don't have to roll down your window. That's not the way the law works. So whether or not it's an immigrant, whether or not it's a brown-skinned person, what they did, regardless of the reason, was okay. See, this is what frustrates people that just don't want to accept that. But the point then becomes, hold on, where's I going? I think generally that was the point, I think. Yeah, then because of their people dressing up as ICE and committing crimes, that only adds more credence to the legal reality there. But if you're being pulled over anywhere, by the way, the law states that you're allowed to drive as long as you want until you find a place that you feel safe. Now, obviously, you could drive for 4 hours and feel that that'll probably be used against you. But if you drive and you want to drive for 5 minutes down the road because you're familiar with the area, legally that will be upheld in court, or it should be. You know as well as I that I don't know a single cop that's going to act like that was okay. See, so the law doesn't always jive with what the police do. But overall, he had every reason to act the way he did, whether or not he knew they were cops. Martin, one of the three men in the vehicle, told CNN he was working with his father-in-law, 18-year-old brother-in-law, on Saturday morning when their vehicle was suddenly surrounded. The agents did not identify themselves, and the family stayed inside the car. And it says, once the glasses were shattered, my father-in-law, fearing for his life from his perspective, he drove the vehicle away from where the agents were. It is unclear in the video when officers were struck by the vehicle. That's even CNN, come on. It's pretty damn clear that's not what happened. In its statement, DHS said the two officers were injured, didn't specify the severity. And of course, there's been no follow-up because it didn't happen. The point is that, are you actually going to argue that because let's just even say you got knocked over from the car, that your logical response is to turn around and open fire on a car with a family? I just don't know why, even the way CNN is engaging with this. If we're to pretend that CNN is all like the way they frame it, they're all gung-ho against this and they hate Trump, that's the way you frame this? Guys, this is shockingly illegal. Like, what they did there should make them lose their jobs. As the truck drives away, 3 apparent gunshots can be heard. 3 of them in the video. And one video shows what seems to be bullet holes in the side of the truck. Seems to be. Once home, the people who they're accusing of being criminals called the police and reported the incident. At 9:30 a.m., about an hour after the vehicle stopped, armed immigration and Homeland Security agents, right, because the federal police are not enforcing the law on the ground in regard to immigration or anything else, right? Along with San Bernardino police, surrounded the family's home. This keeps happening, by the way, where you've got federal, local, 3 different versions of people that just go after a guy who threw a sandwich, right? Or violated a traffic ticket. Like, it's not a joke, by the way. Talk about wasting funds as we're talking about cutting costs. They're building out the martial law system right now is what it feels like to me. But it says, according to the group working with them, Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice, they remained at the scene. The police, the Homeland Security, remained at the scene from 9:30 a.m. all the way until 3:45 p.m., despite never presenting a warrant. Okay, so at this point, guys, regardless of what is going on, they're now inside a home. They are required to present a warrant. And it wouldn't be hard to get if the guy's a criminal, right? If you can go to the court and say, look, this guy is a proven criminal, we can prove, or let's just say he's proven he's a legal immigrant. I can tell, I can prove it. Right? Because of X, Y, and Z, which it is part of it, but realize that even then there is still paperwork required to execute the removal. The point, just like with Garcia and the rest, is so tiresome. We have to fight through the basics. But the point is that once it's now in the house, they're required to have a warrant, which they can say, like I said, he's a criminal. Okay, then here's the warrant for going after him. They didn't do that. And I'll show you why, guys. It's saying pressuring the individual to come outside and placing the entire family in fear. Quote, this is a clear abuse of power. Firing at civilians, detaining families without cause, and silencing community voices is unacceptable and it must end, said the organization. DHS police said local police, quote, located the subject at a residence, briefly had him in custody. They're lying about that now. And he was set free and officers left the scene. Okay, that's pretty obvious. So before you listen to their ridiculous narrative about why they didn't arrest a guy who they had in their custody, the reality is very clear. He either wasn't who they were looking for, or he proved not to be who they claimed he was in regard to being an illegal immigrant. They left him there. There's been no follow-up. They let him go. After everything they did, after circling his house for 12 hours, they leave. They go, oh, okay, and they leave. And guess what they claim? This decision was made despite the subject refusing to comply and wounding two officers, which appears to be a complete fabrication, like a lot of other things they've said. Do you think for 1 second if he wounded officers, they would let him go? You know damn well that's not true. And it says another terrible example of California's pro-sanctuary policies. So what people are trying to make this into online is that somehow that California's policies are why they were unable to arrest the guy. That's a complete fabrication. What they're trying to claim there is that he's there because of these policies. Which, by the way, who knows if that's even the case based on the fact that we don't even have more information about who he is. The reality, though, is that they could have arrested him for 14 different reasons. They could have arrested him for nothing like they're doing all over the place. They didn't. You think if they hurt officers, they wouldn't arrest him? You think if he was an illegal alien, they wouldn't have arrested him? Every which way this goes, they did all of this based on the assumption that he was a criminal. And then, made to look stupid, only doubled down, opened fire, surrounded his home until some, what's the phrase, cooler head prevailed. Or smarter, that simply said, guys, we can't push this any further. This is insane. Like, who knows how it went down? They left the scene. Nothing happened. I just can't stress how far over the top. We need to see what this is. We are watching a Gestapo-like force running through this country with no accountability. They know that. And I'll play a clip for you in a second that literally proves they're acting with political motivation. But, you know, something about this story, I just feel like this needs to resonate with people. This story alone, there's no way around it. Even if this guy was a illegal immigrant, rapist, murderer, it still wouldn't change that the way they conducted themselves shows you that they have zero concern about accountability. What if they would have shot and killed the child in the back seat? Would that change the story for you? I mean, it shouldn't make a difference seeing as how the principle's the same. It's just over the top for me. I can't believe there's any Americans that think this makes sense. Or that there's any American that suddenly is okay with it because the guy's brown. Now, here's another horrifying story. And this one at least ends with something somewhat positive, but ICE is trying to break into a barbershop in this video when the owner won't open the door without a warrant. It's the same story. So they are after somebody. Now, again, it could be that it's somebody they know is an illegal immigrant, or it could be somebody they just wanted to follow up with because he was brown, and they followed him into the store. The point is, regardless of whether or not they know a criminal's in there, they still require a warrant, especially since this would violate this barbershop owner's rights. You see what I'm saying? And so now, if they are just trying to force their way in because these are unaccountable troopers, they won't open the door without a warrant, and they go on to start threatening his parents. You know, the random barbershop owner. Agent says, I'm going to get your dad. I'm going to get your mom. Witness says, y'all can't tell him that, though. His mom? Agent says, yes, we can. That's how we do. This is, you know, we talk about the junior team in regard to politics. We're talking about a bunch of masked up vigilantes who are being given the veneer of some kind of a badge, who are acting like monsters. Here's the clip.
Yeah, you guys gonna break the door to get in there? Yep. Man, that's some hell of shit, bro. Yeah, you gonna hurt, y'all gonna hurt him like that. Garcia, open the door. Garcia, open the door. Open the door. Open the door. Open the door. Yeah. Yeah, that's you. You guys here. Yeah. Garcia, I'm gonna go back to your dad. I'm gonna go back to your dad.
No le hagas caso. No. Do you hear that? I mean, even if, let's just say the dads, like, the idea is you are coercively threatening to go after his family members because you want to get what you want. You think these people care about any kind of repercussions for their actions? Clearly. Cristian, Bondi, Trump, all of them have made it clear you can do whatever you want.
I'm gonna get your mom and your dad. Y'all can't tell him that though. Yeah, we can. Oh, y'all can. Yeah, you can take it to go get his mom. Yeah. Man, identify yourself. I need you guys back. Get back up. We don't have to show you nothing. Hey, get back. Get back. Get back. I don't have to show you. What does that say? What does that say? That's identify.
Right. They're demanding they identify themselves. They're put your phones down. And people are like, I don't have to identify myself. I'm not doing. And then he's like, what does that say? Right? Authority. He's pointing to his police or DHS, whatever it says. That's all that matters to these guys. They're all powerful in their minds. Look, these are the nurses during COVID-19. It's the same kind of momentum. They are out of control. And the power structure is allowing that.
We got a warrant. We got a warrant.
So you don't have his number.
Who are you? Can you guys hear me? Who are you? It's public property. It's public. I'm trying to go on private property. All right, it's good. It's good. I want to go.
So they ask about the warrant. They say yes. Nothing is there. Nothing's presented. They're not trying to present the warrant. Look, the guy in the room is asking for a warrant. And that's why they won't present it. They're just trying to force their way in. So this is not the first time they've lied about that. You realize I'm not saying my opinion. We've literally covered these stories where they've been caught lying about a warrant, failed to identify their names, claim they don't require to show their faces. All of those are false. You realize that despite how obvious it is that they're even the covering of their faces and not identifying themselves, guys, that's law. That's the legal bound. They're legally required to do so, or then that invalidates their arrests. And yet they don't care. Bondi, Trump, the people in charge are like, we don't care. Do it anyway, because we'll back you up. Constitution doesn't matter because we're right. So how it's sort of how it kind of feels from the side right now, right? All these things are terrible and terrifying and unconstitutional, but we think Trump's the right guy. Well, damn it, if that's not terrifying.
No le
hagas caso.
Why
No le hagas caso.
Just because you can't get him, why tell him to go get his mom and dad, bro? That's overflow. That's overdoing it.
Soy Merari.
No le hagas caso. So yeah, that's fine. Tell him we got you. But tell him to get his mom and dad. That's how we do.
Don't care.
See, so I think what happened here is what is a good what's the right word for it? This is a good example. When you push back, not by yourself, but like the crowd develops. People are filming, everyone's calling out. What are you doing? That's wrong. Where's your warrant? And the juice is no longer worth the squeeze. I mean, this is important. This is saying there's always a number in the minds of the people enforcing that they can't push back. It gets too big, they have to pull back. Remember that. Nonviolent, always, in my opinion. Guys, that's unless, of course, you're defending yourself. The point in this case is that they are demonstrating that simply being visual, being present, you could force them to at least not even be accountable, but at least pull back and break the law later. So this guy right here, the one you can see in the middle of the screen, he ended up screaming at one of these people and pulling his mask down after being demanded he did. It's the only one I've ever seen do that. It's in a different video kind of showing the latter part of it. So the point, as more members of the community intervened, the agents left the scene without making any arrests. The incident occurred at the Presidential Barber Shop in Linwood, California. So I'd be interested to find out if anybody follows up with this story. if they ever go after and if they just leave it alone. Like, so if they never go back and nobody ever gets, then they didn't have anything. They were just trying. They were just, what's the word I'm looking for? The phrase. They're just going after whoever they can in front of them, right? They're just testing the waters. Is this person somebody we can arrest? Anybody brown, anybody we know, anybody with a Palestinian flag, especially when we get to a point in a second where you can prove now that these things overlap. The Washington, D.C. part of it is intertwining with this because they're the same thing. This is an example of in Columbia Heights. ICE detained a man and said that they were taking him an hour away to check his legal status. Now, you know why that's wrong? If you don't know his legal status, on what grounds are you arresting him? He said his wife had just given birth and he couldn't eat or walk, excuse me. So we keep seeing this, guys. It doesn't matter. Regardless of if they don't know, they're just scooping people up and disappearing them. This is what happened in the beginning with El Salvador. We've forgotten about that, how alarming that was. If we had never pushed back, there would have been plane after plane of innocent people flying off to El Salvador. But thank God enough people in this country had the wherewithal to say, no, that's so far over the top. And they kept pushing and people, Democrat pushback, judicial coup. No, if those were the things happening, which wouldn't surprise me if they were, I'd call it out too. The reality is it was just people trying to stop you from destroying this country. The bottom line is we're seeing this everywhere. Here's the clip. See, this is what we keep getting. People that are saying either I have my identification, I don't have it in my pocket. Please, I can show you my papers, which by the way, we're back to the old papers, please. That's what we're at now. Or the fact that he's saying like, just whatever. Like I can prove this to you.
She got a brother saying, Billy, brother, please.
And you see the problem with a lot of people right now, especially the Trump supporters, the team sport politics versions, because this guy has an accent because he's brown, that's enough for them. The point is that plenty of them are now saying you're not an American. Even if you're born here, it doesn't make you an American. It quite literally does. Ignorance is everywhere today. So the reality, guys, people are being accosted and taken advantage of in many cases who are in fact legally in this country simply because ICE has no accountability. This is a Connecticut man who has a legal work permit in this country. He was chased and tased, shoved bleeding into an unmarked car. It says, despite demanding a warrant and explaining his daughter was bringing his papers for him, they took him away anyway. Left wrecked truck in street for his daughter to deal with. More than a dozen ICE agents had set up the local police station until they were kicked out by the local police chief. Now, what we're talking about is somebody who was basically hit. They went after this guy. Hit, I don't know if it's total, but hit the car. He tries to basically run, which you can, the argument is always is like, why would he run? Well, when you're living in a police state, maybe sometimes that's the best answer. The point is that all of this is happening despite this person having the legal reality in this country. But it's like, it's almost like we shouldn't even have to make these points anymore. If you could just look to the earliest example of the people they tried to deport, most of them were here legally. Some people just still can't wrap their mind around that. His name is Ricardo Chavez. Tased, beaten, and shoved into an unmarked car. They left his truck for his daughter to find.
Put your hands behind your back.
This is Norwalk, Connecticut.
Sir, please stop. Sir, stop. No, stay on the ground. Put your hands behind your back. Sir, please stop. Sir, please stop.
You guys better call an ambulance. He hit his head really hard. Fucking asshole.
There it is. To what's the point? Was it something that they ultimately, were investigating? There's just so many examples where you can quite literally prove that people are not breaking the law. And they treat them like criminals until they later find out, like the house we just talked about, where they literally could have killed the family, but don't care. This one is, this is just, there's a lot of these. ICE detains a high school soccer star while driving to school, handcuffed and arrested him in front of all the other students, had just dropped off his mom off at work. A routine they followed for years. A member of the first ever state championship win for Toombs County Soccer. He has done a lot of good things for the community. On out the field, they write, he has lived in the U.S. since he was 4 years old when his parents moved, seeking asylum from Guatemala. His only crime was not failing, or said pulled over for failing to come to a complete stop. Now, this you can watch. It's a corporate media clip reporting on the story. You know, each one of these cases are people that are not breaking the law. Here is an example of one that kills me. Again, it shouldn't necessarily matter whether or not somebody is a citizen when it comes to a law that doesn't apply. Like if you're being, let's say in this case, violent towards somebody, it shouldn't matter whether or not you're an illegal. Like it just should just the fact that they're coming up and knocking this person to the ground because they're filming them. ICE blindside tackles a protester from behind. And in fact, this person is a U.S. veteran who fought in Afghanistan. But that doesn't matter because how dare you film us while we're breaking the law?
I hope the good one do that.
Just in case you missed that, the guy's doing literally nothing. He's standing there. It doesn't even appear that he was even filming at that moment, but clearly was one of these people that had been filming them, right? Had been going and filming them in general, and they're not okay with that. Support your veterans, right, guys? Of course, unless they fight the police state, then, you know, then they're illegal immigrant criminal MS-13 members or whatever you want to call them. Aaron Melnick points out yet another case of ICE proudly touting the arrest of a Tren de Aragua member that turned out to be completely made up. The guy had no criminal record at all, had worked for the Pepsi affiliate in Venezuela for decades, and whose worst legal violations were traffic tickets. It just one after another. They just lie, just like we keep seeing. They'll lie about anything. And it's not unique to the Trump administration. They just seem to be especially clumsy at it. This one's important. This is showing you political motivation. So if they're going to tell you that that the liberals screwed it up first, then this shows you what they're doing is going after what they think is the liberal-driven problem, whatever it is. There's no decoupling politics. Everyone in media and anywhere else, they have their opinions. But for them to be acting in such a lawless fashion and doing so driven by politics, it shows you how broken this is. As Melnick wrote, after officers refuse to show badges, a crime, or say what agency they're from, a crime, a bystander tells the agent, you guys are ruining this country. You know that, right? And they say liberals already ruined it.
Yo, let's see some badge. Yo, let's see some badge work. Boys, let's see some badge work.
Do I have to answer to you?
Yes.
You got to answer to somebody.
So
yes, the guy literally. Yes, you do, man. So these people either don't know the law or they have been directly told the law doesn't apply to them. Doesn't it matter? Where's all the Republicans? Doesn't the law matter to you? Aren't you the ones telling us the Democrats are lawless and the ones that are they're breaking this country? Well, don't you care about the law here? Or does the law only work insofar as you like what it does for you when you're fighting the Democrats? It's just stupid where we are. I don't know why this is not laughable. When the Benny Johnsons and Jones and the rest come up and support things, why don't you laugh in their face?
Wait, so you guys are just masked? We're just masked up?
Who are you?
Who are you guys?
I don't care, my guy.
You don't care what agency?
You don't care.
Bro, what agency you guys with? Are you guys working for the U.S. government or not?
Back the fuck up.
Can I see some badge?
Back up.
Sir, can I see some badge?
Is the camera on? Is your... Well, you guys are ruining this country. You know that, right? Liberals already ruined it.
See?
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Liberals already ruined it. That should be sad. But the problem is the ones that are actually cheering this on love it because they're children, right? They are small, petty, vindictive children that just want to do the same thing back, or at the very least want to profit while that all happens. It's pretty pathetic if you ask me, but it's everywhere. ICE is deporting thousands with minor offenses from traffic violations to weed possession. Now, it's not to say that there's not, again, my opinions about traffic violations or in particular, the idea of possessing a plant. But either way, the point is just engaging with the conversation as it is, the law is there. And if we're being told they're going after the worst of the worst, then why did the facts literally prove that's false? That they're going after the low-hanging fruit. They're going after people, by the way, who are, and the bigger point to make around a lot of this, with this point in conjunction or in tandem, Trump administration is reviewing all 55 million foreigners with U.S. visas for any violations. So I shared this and I said hashtag unconstitutional. Of course, people don't. Why is that? They don't understand the point. I'm not saying that reviewing visas is unconstitutional, you moron. I'm saying the reality is around this point, you can clearly see that what they're doing through this is removing somebody's visa because they have a traffic violation is unconstitutional. I mean, and like you could read this for yourself. Actually, I don't think I included it. The point is that you can look through the reality of this. What does the legal reality for doing so? Removing somebody's green card or visa. Well, yes, if you violate the law in some ways, it opens that door. But it has to be certain kinds of offenses, and it has to be in certain contexts. You can read it for yourself. The idea that you can just look through anybody's visas and go, oh, that guy ran a red light. Oh, this guy had some cannabis in his pocket. Neither of which actually apply, especially today, seeing as how these are minor offenses, if even that in most places of the country in regard to cannabis. But that's what they're doing. And then also letting off the MS-13 leaders, by the way. If you're still pretending that's not happening, you're probably a team sport politics player. They let them go, sent them back to El Salvador, not in jail cells, but back to work with Bukele because they have an agreement. They did that in the very beginning. You can prove the amount of people that you can look at the data, the statistics they're releasing. Most people were here legally, either seeking asylum, which they try to frame as illegal. They're not. They're in the process of either seeking asylum or seeking citizenship. Like we're supposed to be telling them to do, right? Or have a green card, have a visa, and just making up reasons or finding some 15-year-old charge and getting them deported. Two of which, by the way, have been Trump supporters who voted for Trump. We've already reported on all of this. But my point is, they're just going to comb through every visa holder and just pluck out the ones that is going to be people that say things about Israel. Somebody who's, every single person in this country has some kind of violation in the last 15 years that they could try to apply. The point is that, that was the major point, is that you can't just revoke a visa based on some minor crime. I guess I did address that. Within certain contexts. What they're doing right here, I can prove to you is unconstitutional. And overlapping this with the farming point, this is going to end us. Florida growers warn Trump he's killing farming. Now, even his weird kind of nod, honestly, I think it's about specifically their own internal work, like his hotels, his restaurants, the people he knows and supports, and their teams and their companies, when he said that, oh, some of the farmers are okay, some of the legal immigrants are okay. Clearly, that hasn't even really applied to anybody outside their inner circle, which just continues to add to the stupidity of all this, the hypocrisy of it all. According to the report from NPR, those farmers have suffered losses at almost half their seasonal workers and can't afford to replace them with H-2A visa workers, as been suggested by Trump administration. So what they're doing is hurting the industry. NPR's Jasmine, look, you could decide whether you agree with that or not. Look, if you're going to pretend like what the narrative has been is sound, or that they actually believe it, then you do this regardless, right? Do the right thing. If they're breaking the law, get them out of here, right? But I guess not when it applies to things we don't like or Trump's team. It's the hypocrisy is everywhere. Pulling punches, or how about the idea that you haven't seen these kind of raids in certain kinds of places, right-leaning locations or high-level, people with lots of money? It's quite obvious what's going on. NPR reporting that despite pleas from farmers to grant amnesty to farm workers, the Trump administration is resisting, with Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins telling them, quote, ultimately, the answer to this is automation. Well, look at that. And then also, when you think about there are 34 million able-bodied adults in our Medicaid program. There's plenty of workers. Learn to code, guys. No big deal. It's the same stupidity. Like, it's just that simple for them. Clearly, they're trying to tap into people. People don't want to come work these jobs. That's the whole point. Automation. Funny how this all comes back around, isn't it? Now it's the through the same problem they've created, guess what the answer is? AI, automation, digital everything. What a coincidence. Who didn't see that coming? Judge orders Alligator Alcatraz to shut down in 60 days. Says no more new detainees. Well, that was fun. Sort of like the Gaza Pier that was built with all your tax dollars and only served to murder people. Apparently this is, well, I shouldn't jump the gun. We'll see how the legal pushback goes. But this is from today. But there was already a legal pushback that kind of put a pause on this. But now the ruling is essentially that they have to shut it down. They have to remove all the different pieces that make it functional. They have to remove all the people. So all this money and time and publicity, and maybe it was all meant to distract you. But it just kind of shows you how ridiculous all of this is. And whether it's about the environment, which it's not inconsequential, left and right, there are people in Florida who care about the Everglades or the area they built this. There's apparently all sorts of environmental issues with species that are almost extinct and all sorts of things, which I don't know why that would be some kind of a political point. It should just matter in a general sense. But overall, it's just that it seems that it's going away from what it was, and it's a wasted money and time. Sure, cutting those costs, though, aren't we? But lastly, on the DC overlap to this, which, by the way, is very clear now. It's being stated as much. Just want to start off with the point of martial law. Straight from Wikipedia. Martial law is the replacement of civilian government by military rule and the suspension of civilian legal processes for military powers. So it doesn't exactly apply to what's happening, but it does, especially if you see this continue to grow into an all-of-nation conversation, right? Martial law is the replacement of civilian government. Now, governing, government enforcement, it's my point is this is more of a mindset to think about. The real point is it's unconstitutional. But I truly believe where we're going is some kind of a national police kind of mindset. That's what Trump's building out. And of course, Trump's the perfect person to roll out something that we've been predicting for a long time that people are on guard about, that largely Republicans would push back on, especially if it was a Democrat. But Trump does it, and it's all about freedom, right? That's how this game's played. Point is replacing that with this kind of a rule and the suspension of civil processes of civil liberty. Same thing we saw in El Salvador, right? It's all about stopping the bad guys. Okay, well, let's just even say they're genuinely trying to do that. Are you willing to exchange liberty for maybe some security? Again, guys, there's a saying for that. And I know you know what we're talking about. But keeping this in mind, we talked about this back on August 6th. Musk, Trump calls to federalize Washington, D.C. If you want to go back to our coverage then and predicting pretty much exactly where we are, Representative Andy Ogles came out and said something I think is just interesting to point out in all this. Some of you, I'm sure you guys all saw this. He came out and literally said, give Trump a third term, give him a peace prize, and let him run D.C. as long as he wants. And of course, the usual response is, oh, you're being trolled. Just like 75% of the rest of things that have already come to pass that you were being trolled until now it's the best thing ever. And we were kidding about the trolling. It's all a troll until suddenly it's not. The point is clearly there is a very obvious push to drive in this direction because Democrats would do it first, or they're the bad guys and we have to make sure he keeps power because he's the good guy. Except for the 22nd Amendment. Oh, that pesky Constitution that we claim we're fighting for that seems to keep getting in the way. It's just obvious that this is about power. Here's Grok. Is it legal for the executive branch to use federal forces within U.S. states? The use of federal forces within U.S. states by the executive branch is a complex issue governed by constitutional principles, federal laws, and historical precedent. Here's a concise overview. Now, sort of like the other point we just made, the idea is that there's very clear outlined exceptions to these things. So, in any context, now we've talked about posse comitatus. The reality is clearly, even with the National Guard, deploying them across state lines is a violation of that. They don't care clearly right now. We'll get to that more in a second. But enforcement of the law, clearly, whether Marines or anybody else. So, constitutional basis. The U.S. Constitution grants the federal government authority to maintain order, which is what they're trying to play in this conversation, and protect national interests. But the 10th Amendment reserves police powers to the states. Reserves. Federal intervention in state affairs is limited and must have legal basis. Right. So the reality, first of all, is that even if we're going to claim that you're allowed to basically roll out the federal police or federalize the location under the guise of order. Well, there's still a very clear, the constitutional rights don't vanish because you're doing that. All right, so that's the first obvious point. Let's just even say you're okay with him federalizing the police force and taking over all of the, basically seizing territory under the guise of making it more safe. The Constitution still exists. This is the game they're playing. That's why Cristian says we can suspend habeas corpus. They don't know what they're talking about. And they're literally, Miller said the same thing. Proud Zionist wants to destroy the Constitution. The idea is they're rolling this out, even if you agree with it, and then still not choosing to ignore your constitutional rights. Within the legal framework, Policy Comitatus generally prohibits the use of federal military forces for domestic law enforcement, unless authorized by Congress or the Constitution. That's the end of the sentence, by the way. So clearly, neither of those apply. Congress clearly hasn't authorized this. The Constitution does not legally allow this outside of the Insurrection Act, national emergencies. Right? So they could play this as a national emergency. They haven't tried to do that just yet. The point is, clearly, there's already enough floated national emergencies. They just don't even seem to matter anymore. So no matter which way you spin this, I mean, even this, they're trying to frame as somehow an insurrection. But, you can't just keep folding in old discussions. Oh, Venezuela is still doing the insurrection, so this one still counts. I mean, I just think they recognize that nobody cares. I mean, we all care, but there's no, Congress won't do anything about it. So they figured, let's do it anyway. Bottom line is, there's no which way you spin this, guys. The reality is what they're doing is a crime. Last part was other exceptions. Federal forces can protect federal property, enforce federal court orders, or respond to disasters under laws like the Stafford Act. Is that what's happening? I mean, you're watching a rollout of an entire city. Is that all federal property? Well, you could make an argument maybe DC applies, but what about the other ones? You see, this is setting the table for what is coming. Just by the way, like most of us predicted and got yelled at by people when it first started. Trump's not going to do that. He cares about the legal reality. He's not going to go, it's just DC because it's so bad. And we all said, probably not. Probably going to end up being more. And no, it won't. And now here we are. And now those people are going, we need it because Democrats. It never stops. But let's also not forget, violent crime in D.C. hits 30-year low, January 3rd, 2025. Now, yes, of course, could they be wrong? Could they have made up the numbers? Obviously. Do you have evidence to back up that claim? Look, I mean, even the things that Trump swung up in front of his presentation, I mean, despite nobody giving that information out, which is, it's like comically absurd. If they wanted you to know, they would have given it to you. The reality is people that were able to glean shots of it were able to prove that these things were completely subjective. They are making up their stories. Now, is DC a bastion of safety and freedom? No, there's all sorts of crime. There's all sorts of muggings and murder. So too are there in a lot of places in this country. And I'm not saying that's something we should support. But if you think for 1 second that what they're doing is about stopping crime, you're not paying attention to who these people are. They're literally committing crime by doing what they're doing. On top of that, you can look at what they're doing anywhere in the world, especially in this country, and prove to yourself that they don't care about these things, as will be evidenced by the ongoing crime in DC the moment they get what they want. But the point is, all they can do is go, like Miller came out and said, those are Democrat lies. Please take the moment to prove this to us. Show us why you know that. Just by saying we know Democrats lie does not work for anybody with a brain. Yes, they do. But you can't, people who care about these things want it to be proven, especially as you're clearly grabbing power from some kind of technocratic Zionist position. But National Guard, federalize the DC police, putting the DEA head in the inserting them as the head of the Metropolitan. It's everything about this is wildly unprecedented. Now here's Trump in regard to this situation, talking about the numbers and the lying about it. The Mirror made this up. Here's what he said, and we'll talk about it afterward.
Give you more control over DC when they return from recess?
Look, DC is a miracle what's happened. I mean, they can come up with fake numbers like the mayor's doing. Oh, no, it was going down for 20 years. You didn't live here. You know, have you been mugged? Okay.
Right, because someone's been mugged, therefore we know it's all true. I mean, really? You can do this. You can go to New York City. Pretty much, everyone I know who's ever lived in that city has a story about being mugged or being, New York City's got a lot of crime, but is it considered to be worse than any country in the world? I don't know, maybe. But the point is, at the end of the day, That's what matters, the provable information. And if you can prove that DC is the worst in the world, it still wouldn't rationalize your illegal actions. Like, this is the same idea about deporting American citizens. Well, if they bop a grandma on the head, if they rape people, that doesn't change the legal reality. Just because the crime is that serious? Yes, I think rapists are bad too. It does not change the legal reality of how things are supposed to be done. All they're doing is using certain situations to get you pliable, to get you willing to ignore what they know you're supposed to think is foundational in order to set the table for the next time they do it. A little bit more, a little bit further. Every single day. It's from left, from right, every administration as far back as you want to look.
DC was a hellhole, and now it's safe. And in fact,
oh, look at that. Just like that. Now it's all safe, right? Because the criminals all just got arrested? No. I mean, the reality is they've arrested some people, but like a fraction of what the reality is. So why is it all safe now? Because it's an illusion. Just like with Bukele, I wouldn't be surprised if they literally made deals with gangs in the streets of New York or DC. It's exactly what the Bukele model is. Suspend civil liberties, lie about what's going on, preach it's all freedom and happiness because the criminals we're on your side. It's sort of how government operates, isn't it? I'm being kind of facetious, but it wouldn't surprise me. Overall, you're going to pretend that DC is just suddenly safe based on your breaking the law, based on you tackling anybody in the streets. I mean, think of it like this. They have been going after people who are criminals and not alike. Pretty much anybody out. We've seen videos of them tackling people. We've seen them accosting people on their own stoops. So, if you just flush the street with a bunch of maniacal cops, yeah, well, the crime's going to slow down too. They're going to go, we're going to wait until they get out of the way. Does that mean the crime is done, that it's no longer there, that it's suddenly safe? No, it just means you've created a lull because of your police state. Hey, maybe that's what you all want. I don't.
This morning, I said, I hate to say this because it doesn't sound very good, but there have been no murders in D.C. in the last week. That's the first time in anybody's memory that you haven't had a murder in a week.
I mean, is that true? I'd love to find out. How can you, at the end of the day, if they're now basically occupying the city, isn't it just as likely that they could lie about that? My point is it's ultimately irrelevant to them breaking the law in what they're doing. But it's funny how the numbers now are all taken at face value, and before it was all a bunch of lies. I find it hard to believe that there's just simply zero murder because they're there. It's a large place, and there's lots of places where they're not at. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day, guys. Whether or not there's high crime, the law still applies to them.
And I think the mayor has to get on the ball because we have a situation, and she's a nice woman.
Look at his hat. See, guys, there's so much coordinate. Trump was right about everything. That's an Alex Jones meme. It's just, what do you mean he's right about everything? You mean except literally most of what he talks about? Same with Biden. Right now I could prove to you 14 lies he said we've already gone over a lot of this stuff. Lies about Garcia, lies about his tattoos, right about everything. How embarrassing. But people love it. It's all a game to them.
But I'll tell you what, she's got to get on the ball. We have, I don't want to see phony numbers. DC hit an all-time high last year of absolute total crime.
What does that even mean? Is that a specific statistic of absolute total crime? Is that a different from complete crime? He's just throwing things out there, guys. He doesn't. This is like how embarrassing it is. And again, if you think it's about left versus right, you're not paying attention. But he is bad about it. He speaks off the cuff and throws out nonsense all the time.
It continued pretty bad. And then
listen to that statement. It's completely abstract.
Of absolute total, we have. I don't want to see phony numbers. DC hit an all-time high last year of absolute total crime, and it continued pretty bad.
Oh, okay. The highest of absolute total crime, and it continued pretty bad. Easy to break that down.
And then we put some strength into it, got the numbers down a little bit, but we broke.
Oh, wait, a little bit? I thought you just said that it was safe and it's all clean, but now it's only down a little bit. See, it's funny. On one side of the conversation, it's about how great we are and we solved everything. Then the latter half of the conversation is, well, it's not done yet. We got a lot more work to do. We need at least 6 more months to finish this out. It's like you can maybe do that in 2 separate sentences next time.
But in the DC National Guard, and we coupled them with the police, and it has been amazing. I have friends that live here, people that work in the White House, but I have friends that live here. They're all going out to dinner now. They haven't got.
He does this every time. all the foreign leaders are going, please, Trump, please make a deal with me. He did it just like that. And turns out he lied about all of that. He does this. This is what this shows me is not just kind of like a narcissism, but like a insecurity. This constant need to be like, I'm the best and everyone likes me and everyone's asking me for everything. And I did this and it's amazing. What you did is the best I've ever seen. Anyone's ever done anything. Everything he does is hyperbolic. That's weakness to me. But either way, do you really think he's got all these friends in DC who go, man, Trump, everything's different now? Maybe. But I just know how often he gets caught lying about exactly like that, just to sell his narrative.
Out in years. One man, I told this story yesterday when we were with the police and with the National Guard. We had a great little celebration, brought them hamburgers, brought them pizza, but we were with them and
Yeah, he brought some pizzas to the police state. And the Benny Johnsons of the world loved it. Nick Sorter was like, yay, feeding the police state, freedom.
I told the story about one friend hasn't been out in 4 years to a restaurant, and now he's been out 4 nights in a row. He called me this morning, by the way. He said it's so safe. He feels like totally safe. He can walk. He's got a 10-block walk. He walks it. He wouldn't have walked those 10 blocks. He said it would be a chain of hell, he called it. He said it was just horrible. He had no chance of making it to the 10th block.
No chance. He would have been murdered just like that. Now he's completely free. Look, there's probably some level to it, guys. Right? I mean, the idea that in a normal day probably is kind of places like that. I mean, even like, look, I lived in Honolulu for, I don't know, years. And the point is that downtown Waikiki can be pretty rough at night. There's lots of crime. My point, though, is that it's like, it's not, it doesn't even matter. The bottom line is you can have that happen in lots of cities where there's danger. It's not, and so is it better now? I don't know. That's up for debate. It really is. Lots of people have different opinions, especially whether you're exchanging one thug for another in a police state. But at the end of the day, is if you roll out a bunch of DHS and spend all this money to just like patrol everything, well, yes, there will be less people in the streets. Does that mean crime is gone? No. So this is just a game of illusions at the end of the day. And guess what? Doing so in a police state unconstitutional manner. So who's really winning here? The state. So Aaron Melnick points out, Rechlin-Mernick, Trump once again making up statistics of crime in DC. And this is his opinion, but look, I agree with this. No matter where you look, yes, could it be falsified? Anything could be falsified. Is there any evidence to suggest that the numbers we can see are is there some other do you have data you're counterbalancing it with? Not that I can see. And it says DC crime, like in almost every other major city, hit all-time highs in the 1980s, 1990s. All right, so he's lying about it hitting an all-time high right before he started this, which, you can look up, you can see the data contradicts what he says. So if your choice is just to line up with whatever Trump says, regardless of any source material, well, then you've already made your choice. Just your choice is to nod before he even opens his mouth. That's what this is. Now, today, Trump threatens full federal takeover. Not just the police, not just, enforcing for now, but a full federal takeover of Washington, D.C., accuses the mayor of peddling inaccurate crime figures. So it's just incremental. It's barely even a boiling frog at this point. I mean, they cranked this up right away, guys. It took a matter of days between sweeping up the crime to maybe federalizing the police to maybe walking down, now full federal takeover to then 30 seconds later, we're going to roll this out around the country. Before that, actually, Defense Secretary authorizes National Guard in D.C. to carry arms, right? So we're thinking about a complete takeover of the entire area, and we're also going to allow you guys to now carry arms, even though that is a violation. Every which way about this, guys. And of course, this is why this becomes relevant again. Remember when Nick came out and said, AG Bondi just deputized Secret Service to giving them warrantless arrest powers. Woohoo, freedom. And of course, the argument is, well, don't all police have that power? Well, yes, BC, if you're engaging with this as if what they tell you is the only thing going on, like a child, then maybe that makes sense to you. When you can look at the facts and recognize that they're not just, are you really thinking Secret Service are walking up with the billy club up and down the street going, don't bash those windows, we're just keeping the peace? That's not what they're doing, especially when you get to the point where we're going to get to in a second that shows you they're actually continuing the ICE raids on immigrants through this logic. The point is that all you really did was deputize these people to act without warrants in everything they're doing, which is what they're now doing. Bursting into homes, arresting people because they look like they're breaking the law with nothing other than assumption. That's what this was. But you can read through the comments of people screaming. It's insane, the stupidity around this conversation. I said, so Nick Shorter, you're now cheering on warrantless arrest powers? It's America first to openly violate the U.S. Constitution because they did it first, which is the argument. Democrats ruined it. We have to fight for it to take it back. It seems you're blindly cheerleading this country right into despotism, along with all your team sport politics sycophants. That's the reality, guys. You've created a Gestapo police force that has no accountability, who is not just enforcing the law on the streets, but looking for people, hunting things out, going after people that look like they're in the wrong place, or walking up people in their homes and saying, give me your identification. That is not, see, people like Nick, especially today, would tell you that's how it's supposed to work. They're just trying to keep the streets safe because you're now basically bootlicking supporters of the empire while you're acting somehow still like you're rebels fighting the deep state. It's kind of sad, but I think more and more people are starting to see that. Now, Miller is a whole special case in all this. Like, I frankly think it's very clear this guy has so much disdain for Americans that it's hard to watch him speak. It's the same way I felt Elon Musk was pretending to be MAGA or whatever the way he was kind of playing what he thought you wanted. It was hard to watch. It was so obvious. This guy is clearly out to destroy this place. That's my opinion. He is a very proud Zionist who actively does not think this country should even exist, in my opinion. The point is, he is now coming out and screaming what needs to be said to get rabid, specifically team sport Republicans, to do whatever they say next. Miller unloads on stupid white hippies and communism and unhinged crime rant, as Daily Beast, the Republican platform, puts it. What I think is crazy about this is they're trying to turn this into, just like we saw during, and which is still happening, people who were protesting the genocide, and morons like this guy turned him into Hamas supporting Democrats, liberals who hate freedom in the country. I mean, not sure, some of them were there, but when you now stand back and look, it was literally anybody who had morals, left, right, aware of the illusion, people, Jews, Muslims, Christians, all supporting it, and they turned them all into anti-Semites. That's what this, it's lazy. And honestly, didn't even work, but the narrative, the power structures carry it forward. So here he is doing the same thing. He wants you to think people protesting one of the most obvious, martial law police state rollouts I've ever seen. He wants you to think they're a bunch of Democrat 80-year-old women who, I'll let you listen to the way he describes it. It's insulting because whether or not they're the characteristics he lays out, people are protesting it because this is wrong. And Miller is cheerleading it on, the destruction of this country. White House aide Stephen Miller has embarked on an unhinged rant about stupid white hippies who have inspired him to bring more troops into the Capitol. See, it speaks for itself. Well, actually, let me play it first and I'll read this because it'll make more sense. Because it's important to listen to the way this is laid out. Oh, shoot. Tell me I got that. Yeah, there it is. There's two videos here. All right, so here's the first one. And it's basically one clip, but it's cut up in two. But the point is, he says the stupid white hippies and the communist point.
And the voices that you hear out there, those crazy communists,
the people protesting is what he's talking about. People outside protesting the federalized police takeover of this area.
Out there, those crazy communists, they have no roots, they have no connections to the city, they have no families they're raising in this city.
Okay, how could you possibly know that? You're telling me people in D.C. who are protesting the federal takeover of D.C. have no connection to D.C., have no families in D.C., have no, I mean, that's insane. Yeah, maybe some of them are somewhere else, but this guy is so desperately trying to continue the narrative of like the Democrat paid protester, which by the way is obviously real, just like the Republican paid protester is obviously real. But you must know by now that there's a ton of people across this country that are not okay with this, left and right, and people who just have a brain. At the end of the day, all he can do is call you a communist paid protester without any evidence to back it up because this guy hates this country.
They have no connections to the city. They have no families they're raising in this city. They have no one that they're sending to school in this city. They have no jobs in this city. They have no connections to this community at all. But they're the ones who've been advocating for the 1%.
Oh, really? See, here's where I think it's interesting. Here's where he meshes narratives together. So now you're telling me that the protesters pushing back against the growing police state are the ones supporting the 1%? You are the 1%, man. This game they're playing where they're the rebels fighting the power it's just embarrassing at this point. It's quite stale. People see through it. But now, in just spectacularly clumsy fashion, this guy wants you to think the people protesting against the power structure are the ones supporting the 1%. In what possible way could you make that make sense? The 1%, the elitists, the technocrats, the oligarchs, the lobbyists, they're supporting that? You know why he wants you to think that? Because he needs you to think this is the deep state. The ones protesting on the streets are the ones that we're actually fighting as the rebels. I'm not joking. This is embarrassing.
The ones who've been advocating for the 1%, the criminals, the killers, the rapists, the drug dealers.
Okay, but now you're telling me the rapists and criminals are the 1%? Or are you saying that the ones protesting out there are rapists and criminals? I mean, you guys just have to understand how silly this is. No matter which one thing you take at any given moment, it's embarrassing. He's ridiculous. How could you possibly know what hundreds of people, if not thousands, are all, they're all not one thing or are one thing? He's just politically he's just trying to mobilize the political narrative here. And that's why this was a little gotcha moment, that he stood there and spoke to a bunch of military that probably think he's a moron. None of them say anything. They don't clap. He just gets done talking and they just go forward. That's all it was. It was a moment to put on TV. That's what this was.
And I'm glad they're here today. Because me, Pete, and the vice president are all going to leave here, and inspired by them, we're going to add thousands more resources to this city to get the criminals and the gang members out of here.
Right. Okay. So because Americans are protesting within their rights, we're going to bring out more police. That's what he just said. Wait a minute. I thought the police were because of the crime. I thought the police were because of the unstable Democrat-run city. But now you're telling me we're going to roll them out as punishment for you protesting our actions? Yes. This guy is either that stupid or just that brazen. I don't know. Yep. And ask yourself, why is he even talking? Why is he even here? You realize that's that's Pete Hegseth. Why is he the one talking? Why is Miller the one always in the front? It's a good question. Here's the other one.
So we're going to ignore these stupid white hippies that all need to go home and take a nap because they're all over 90 years old.
Okay, so now they're all white hippies over 90 years old. He's obviously being somewhat facetious, but clearly this is what they're trying to frame it as. A bunch of Democrat older women who have no, except at the same time supporting the 1%, or they are rapists or they're supporting rapists. Whichever which way you want. They are whatever you might be thinking right now you hate. Right? Whatever that is, that's what they are. Go get them. It's just so ridiculous. Then there's the vice president laughing about it. Why isn't the vice president speaking?
And we're going to get back to the business of protecting the American people and the citizens of Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Stephen. A few questions.
Mr. Vice President.
Yeah. Okay, shut up, Stephen. We're done. They didn't even say anything. He's giving this big power speech and I'm in control, and everyone just looked away. It's pretty clear, in my opinion, that the body language shows they're like, this guy's a moron. Anybody who's not completely emotional and partisan driven is going to listen to that and go, well, that's just dumb. These people, some of them probably know something. My family that lives here. It's just silly. But this is what works for them. Now, here's what the article says. White House aide Stephen Miller has embarked on an unhinged rant about stupid white hippies who have inspired him to bring more troops into the nation's capital. Just like everybody was a Hamas-supporting terrorist who recognized a genocide, right? The same kind of hyperbolic, broad framing that just gets you to think one thing. During the bizarre PR stunt at Union Station to highlight Donald Trump's crime crackdown, Miller lashed out at crowds who had gathered to protest against the takeover. That's what happened. Speaking alongside Vice President and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, that's what he is, by the way. So again, ask you why he is speaking right there, told reporters he was glad the protesters had come because me and Pete and Vice President are all going to leave here, and inspired by them, we're going to add more resources. That's what he said. We're going to use your legally protected act to rationalize more police. pretty self-explanatory. Not because of crime, but because, look, here's the best way to frame it. That's why they're there. We are shutting you down. We are showing you who's in control, and we're slowly taking over this country. And if you stand up and protest, well, we're going to come after you. I mean, here's a good clip to play right there. This is not the first time Trump has brought this up, guys.
Big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protest that wants to come out, they will be met with very big force. By the way, for those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force. And I haven't even heard about a protest, but, you know, this is people that hate our country, but they will be met with very heavy force.
That's it. There's no out of context there. If you protest, you'll be met with force. Hey, freedom, constitutional rights, guys. Love Trump. It's sad. I just hate it's just disappointing, to be honest, that there are anybody out there who tries to pretend like they care about these things and supports what this person is saying, or any of them, by the way. He says, so we're going to ignore these stupid white hippies and all need to go home to take a nap because we're all over 90 years old and we're going to get back to the business of protecting the American people and citizens of Washington. Aaron Melnick points out, or first, this is Alanya Treen saying, Trump says he's hoping to raise $2 billion from Congress to beautify Washington, D.C. Says they'll give great asphalt. They'll be beautified. What does that sound like to you? Do you think they're going to spend $2 billion on asphalt and streets? No, they're building out the police state. They're building out the smart city, freedom city epicenter is what it feels like to me. We already talked about the Peter Thiel overlap to all of this, the Freedom City point, which tomorrow I'm going to talk more about. $2 billion. That's just what they're talking about, but you see where this goes. Aaron Melnick points out, reminder again, Congress outright stole $1 billion in taxpayer dollars from D.C. earlier this year under Trump's administration. We're taking taxpayer money that people in D.C. paid for local services, but due to a budget quirk during the continuing resolution, I'm sure what a quirk, right? Congress took it away from D.C. So let's pretend like this is totally not coincidence, okay? Or rather, I should say that wrong. But like let's pretend this is coincidence. You're telling me that right before the continuing resolution, the gap, all the weird things that happened, they essentially used that to steal $1 billion from a place they then federalize? Guys, this is either stealing from the people of D.C. while framing you're helping them, or there's something bigger than this happening. I just think it's very weird. Overall, you're watching money move and it's hurting the people of D.C. while they pretend they're fighting for them. Nothing new if you're paying attention. True Stream Media. Metro Transit Police says last night during a fare enforcement at Navy Yard Station, the Metro Police stopped a 28-year-old for fraudulent use of a kid's ride-free card. How dare he? Which is intended for D.C. students age 5 to 21. Misuse of these fare cards is fare evasion and will not be tolerated. Get that sandwich thrower. The real criminals today, right? True Stream Media. They tackled a woman to the ground, maced her in the face, put her in cuffs, and detained her over checks notes on the burgeoning Aurelian police state, a $50 civil citation for fare evasion. That's what's going on. That's what they're posting about. I mean, guys, that's just shocking. And so they're literally going after people like this and claiming they're stopping the worst of the crime. This is no different than we saw in LA, we saw around the immigration, this whole country, what we're seeing around Israel and the protests. It's not new. It's the continuation of the same plan. But here's Nick Sorter doing his cheerleading tap dance. Oh my God, look at DC. It's totally great now. Because of this one video of nobody in the streets. It shows you everything's great, right? It shows you a ghost town, more like it. But it says DC streets that are regularly overrun by youths who terrorize the community, which there's a lot of places where you have a nightlife that very clearly does that, which is neither good nor bad. It's something you can talk about. There should be police that engage with this. My point is that using those problems anywhere in this country to roll out a police state should be the very thing that a supposed constitutionalist Republican, like Nick pretends to be, should care about, or whatever he pretends to be, somebody fighting for Trump's administration. You're supposed to be the ones telling us you're fighting to bring back the law and order and the Constitution, and you're literally cheering on police force to allegedly make things more safe. Do you not understand what liberty for safety means? Do you even know about the Constitution? The point is, Trust a Thought comes in and says, people aren't going out because no one wants to be tackled by Metro Transit police on power trips or private military contractors who think they're at war. This is not stopping crime. It's killing DC's economy and isolating its people. Nick jumps in and says, name a single incident of someone being tackled by any sort of cop in DC that wasn't committing a crime. Just one. It's people like you who are attempting to instill fear. Oops. Oh, well, here's 4 examples. Checks notes. Yeah. Oh, he didn't respond. How funny that is. Give me one example. Oops. I'll just shut up and run away and pretend like it didn't happen. Great journalism, bud. Well, here's an example of exactly what she's talking about, or just more illegal action, whether it's tackling somebody or not. U.S. Capitol Police and ICE, because you see it's the same thing, arrest a billboard truck driver who was protesting Gaza famine. Right. Not illegal. No, not illegal. Breaking the law? No, not that I can tell. Here they are, though. The driver was arrested. The truck was towed near NBC office at 400 North Capitol Street, site of the 4-week media encampment on Gaza. The truck displayed a message about Israel's ongoing famine in Gaza, featuring President Trump's recent statement, quote, children in Gaza face real starvation. This is an alarming crackdown on free speech. Right. So what they do, they stopped him. They took him out of the car and they shut him down. They arrested him, took him away. That's in Trump's America right there, right? That's Trump's DC crackdown. What is it about a billboard truck driver that is somehow against the law? Well, one, probably using Trump's phrase that he is kind of biting him in the butt right now. We'll get to that tomorrow. Israel. I mean, look, guys, if we're going to be honest about this, this is completely within the realm of free speech. Like, this is him expressing his opinion on the side of his own car. And you're going to arrest him for that? Why? Because this is what it's really about. Control. Narrative control, life control, like literally engineering the way we react and respond, especially when it comes to a very certain power. But this is the reality, guys. So you're going to tell me, Nick Sorter, that this is okay with you? Why? Because he's making it safer for Israel? Hashtag winning. Well, here's Trump telling you that this is going to go even further, which is exactly what we were telling you to begin with. Trump says he's cleaning up DC with the National Guard. He'll now move to another location, stating Chicago will be next, and then New York. I mean, it's one of those moments, guys. We told you this was coming. It wasn't hard to see that this was coming. And I simply said, here's Benny Johnson doing the same thing. They're all, yay, totalitarianism. Only budding authoritarians and partisan sycophants are cheering this on at this point, guys. Or those too blind to see the obvious. If you're cheering this now, but would be screaming martial law if it was Biden, Obama, or anybody with a D by their name, then you're a hypocrite and you're part of the problem. But sadly, most of them are team sport politics, and they know that and don't care. Arthur says moped delivery drivers disappearing from DC streets under Trump's police takeover, which is looking more and more like an immigration crackdown than anything else. And Aaron says the federal takeover of DC law enforcement should be seen as more about recreating what happened in Los Angeles than about addressing street crime. Roughly half of all, and this guy, you look into his account for yourself, you'll note the one thing he's consistent, which is why I point to him, is that he backs up what he says with data, with direct source material every time. What happened in Los Angeles it says roughly half of all arrests in the last week have been immigration arrests. A huge swath of which are delivery drivers. They're taking low-hanging fruit like they are everywhere else and then convincing people that they're saving DC by arresting people that are delivering pizzas. 7 states approve National Guard troops to support immigration detention operations. It expands. Raw News Alert says National Guard troops are preparing to deploy across 19 states to support DHS in a sweeping crackdown on immigration and federal crimes. Funny how they just mashed it together now, right? Who cares? Whatever the narrative is today, police state for your safety, of course. Just like Greg Reese put the clip out recently, police state for your safety. It's exactly what they're doing. It's just one of those unfortunate I told you so moments, guys. Remember, this is what they said you were never going to happen because Trump's not going to do that. And then it happens, and now they're cheering it on for why it should happen. Pentagon plan, and this is on top, this came out on the 12th of August, guys. Pentagon plan would create military reaction force for civil unrest. What does that mean to them today? Protesting. You've heard him say it over and over. The Trump administration is evaluating plans that would establish a, quote, domestic civil disturbance quick reaction force composed of hundreds of National Guard troops, who, by the way, will be there forever now because military presence forever for your safety, with rapidly deploying, tasked with rapidly deploying into American cities, facing protests, because those are now illegal apparently, or other unrest, because protests are unrest, right? According to internal Pentagon documents reviewed by Washington Post. Welcome to your future. Thanks a lot, Nick Shorter, Benny Johnson, all the rest. Thank you for cheering on your police state. I'm sure you'll benefit wildly up until you go to jail. At the end of the day, guys, this is an ongoing reality. A quick reaction force is not some temporary thing. He's talking about national or just whatever presence they install being something that is now on there going forward. You roll out a protest, they'll rationalize why that one guy's violent. It's all a crime. Shut it down forever. We all see this left and right. On top of that, earlier this evening, and this is the second time I've seen this, agents from ICE and other federal agencies, because it's all just kind of meshed together now, in Rhode Island, Metro in DC, or outside Rhode Island, Metro in DC, asking police exiting their station for their IDs. Per someone who experienced it, when the person presented their real ID, an agent said that wasn't sufficient. Look at that. The real ID they tried to push on everybody that Jones pretends didn't happen, but is still very much there. Not enough. But I thought that was the whole point. Wasn't that supposed to be universal? No, they just need you to be digital. That's what it's about. And he says, we have apparently entered the papers, please stage of Trump's takeover of DC. True Street Media points out the Marshal Services that say in an effort to make DC safe again, the U.S. Marshals announces a $500 reward for tips that lead to arrest in Washington, D.C. Scan the QR code, which should be like a never, ever, ever thing for you, by the way. Never. My point, though, D.C. make it safe again by telling on your neighbor. See something, say something. Isn't that Republicans that used to make fun of Democrats for doing that? Funny how it always comes back around. Wow, even the freaking Stasi didn't offer 500 reward bonuses to their informants, says True Street Media. Way to innovate by using our taxpayer dollars to get us further enslave ourselves. Here's Tim Dillon that says, they've already got the military in the streets, FEMA camps, Palantir monitoring us. If this doesn't scare you, you're nuts. I agree. And he says, this is everything Alex Jones warned about. Even conspiracy theorists' wet dream. And I agree with David Icke. He goes, yes, Alex did warn about this, and I before him. But now he's promoting the man who's doing it, while I'm still calling out more than 30 years later. I mean, it's funny that Tim Dillon would make this point. Like, are you unaware that he's literally cheering on these things or downplaying Palantir? It's kind of silly, isn't it? And the point is, yes, whether he pointed at it or not is not the same as him now ushering it in. It's the whole Bill Cooper point, guys. If Bill Cooper, in the time Jones was trying to kind of grift off the 9/11 information that Cooper was correct about, that Jones basically siphoned from, when Cooper came out and said Jones was a grifting, lying manipulator before he was suspicious, it was, suspiciously whatever happened to Cooper. How does that not show you, or everybody else who's left? We just talked to Reese in the interview. David Knight says the same. Everybody who's ever worked, it tells you they're manipulators, lying, not checking their sources. It's everywhere you look. The point is that you can point these things out because maybe you knew, or maybe you knew then for other. The point is when it matters, the North American Union, whatever it is, people are pulling their punches, and that's whether they changed over the years or not. It's the moment of truth. Now is what matters. Now we can actually do something. We could have done something before, but we can see it. We can marshal our resources and push back on this, and they're the ones that are trying to distract you every which way you look. Should be pretty clear by now. And there's plenty. We're going to get into more stuff tomorrow, like around Venezuela. Like it's crazy. Sal the Agras and plenty of people are like, what happened to this man? Jones is now cheering on the takeover of Venezuela. But back to this point, Jason Bassler says, what's happening in D.C. isn't law and order. It's martial law wrapped in patriotism and platitudes. Fear has been engineered, amplified, weaponized, and is now mobilizing MAGA for a war they've been waiting to fight. Pay attention. History is repeating itself. And I'll leave you with a great point from Kerry. At this point, and this is not like an ultimatum, it's just that, look, this is so self-evident. What's going on? Again, whether you think they've got good intentions or not, whether you like the outcome they're pointing to or not, the actions are wrong. It is completely counter to what you claim you're fighting for. And point to fact, won't come back. They will not give this power back. They never do. So the point is that with that being so obvious, at this point, Trump supporters can either admit they've got duped by a manipulative politician who promised revolutionary change but has done little more than fill the swamp, prop up the technocracy, and gaslight people on Epstein, peace, and many other issues, or admit they are rabid authoritarians who care far more about the illusion of power, control, and safety than they ever valued freedom. Excuse me. Then give him a chance grace period should have been over a year ago, or the give him a chance grace period should have been over years ago, but it's indisputably expired now. I agree. 100%. I just hope people can find the courage to be honest about this with themselves. It is everywhere you look. So we'll leave it there today. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a lot to catch up on as well. I'm sure there'll be plenty of more stories that swing up tomorrow that make the show even longer than I want it to be, but we'll get there tomorrow and talk about plenty. I hope you share this with people. I hope you talk about this with people. All right. Have conversations about the information, print out the source material, like the real source material, not just my show, the source material, the data points that you can prove and research and discuss. Please do that. It's so important to have this conversation, especially when you disagree with somebody, and then do your best to make sure it's amicable. It's okay to disagree, but talk about it. Critically think about it. Don't just take people's narratives, because everywhere you look right now, people are trying to manipulate you. Question us, question them, question everybody. Thank you for being here. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
From the President's office in the White House in Washington, D.C., we present an address by the President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower.
In holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.